Ji-hoo was a little-known mangaka and lived an ordinary, measured life. Waking up at home, he looked out the window and was horrified, as he discovered that he was in a completely different place. Instead of shopping centers and shops, there was a dense forest and not a single building nearby. The guy couldn't understand where everything had disappeared and why there were only trees and mountains around. Ji assumed that for unknown reasons he was transported to a parallel world. The perplexed young man sat down at the table and began to think about what he should do, because he had drawn a lot of manga, but it was not possible to submit the work. After some time, Ji nevertheless decided to find out in more detail about the place where he ended up. Ji-hoo got on his scooter and raced through the forest, where there seemed to be nothing alive except plants. After driving a few meters, he discovered a stream and headed along it, the fog thickening. At a certain moment, he reached a small lake in which a young girl was swimming. The girl was pretty enough, which attracted the attention of the main character. Ji, in turn, peered at the stranger, trying to understand who she was and what kind of world this was. A moment later, the young lady noticed the guy and asked who he was and what he was doing here. Thinking it was some kind of trap, Ji turned his scooter in the opposite direction and rushed further through the forest. Ji, in turn, was outraged that her charms did not work on the young man. In this connection, Ji decided to catch up with Ji-hoo, clinging to trees with a web and moving like Spider-Man. The guy was perplexed and asked her if she was really a descendant of that same superhero. The stranger ignored the question, continuing to move extremely quickly, intending to catch up with the frightened young man, who, in turn, did not understand what was happening and why she was chasing him. Ji needed to get to the only safe place, his home, but the scooter was too slow. The unknown spider could not come to terms with the fact that the young man did not appreciate her. A second later, Ji-hoo saw a huge amount of cobwebs above him. The main character began to nervously hit all the buttons on the scooter, naively believing that in this way he would give it speed. However, the scooter suddenly turned into a huge motorcycle. Ji was shocked by such a transformation of the bike. Meanwhile, the futuristic iron horse was actively picking up speed. Swimming crocodiles in the lake saw the boy and prepared to attack him. But the speed of the motorcycle was so great that it knocked down the alligators like bowling pins and moved on. Ji-hoo had difficulty dodging the huge number of trees in the forest. He could not slow down his Mustang and did not understand how to stop it. Ji was also amazed at the incredible speed of the metal apparatus. Meanwhile, Ji reached his home and began to wonder what to do next. At that moment, the young man discovered that a huge stone was flying at him. Ji was horrified. The main character instantly rushed forward, thereby managing to escape by driving into the territory of his home. The irrepressible spider began to threaten him, urging him not to be a coward and not to run away. She followed him, but ran into an invisible protective barrier that prevented her from entering the yard. Ji-hoo realized the advantage of the moved house and watched the perplexed stranger. The young lady noted the trap set by an unknown guy around the building. She tried to break through the protective field, but she was never able to do so. The spider could not understand what kind of magic this stranger used. Suddenly she managed to push through the barrier, but he still did not let her inside. The little girl approached her embittered sister and suggested that she look for another rich man. But she flatly refused and stated that it was no longer about money, but about her dignity. All this time, Ji-hoo looked at the spider with a smile on his face, which she did not like. And the guy calmly went to the house, which was literally moving around, thinking about how lucky he was, because just a couple of minutes ago he thought he was going to die. Ji could not understand how everything worked, because there was no electricity in the house. But at the same time, the refrigerator and kettle with a laptop, as well as lamps, were disconnected from the network. Ji came to the conclusion that this could only happen if there was a relocated generator. At this time, electric lines crawled along the walls. The guy assumed that voltage was supplied with their help. In this connection, he decided to check and touched one of the sparkling lightning bolts. As a result, he was electrocuted. The windows suddenly opened, and a stream of energy quickly rushed out. A moment later, the main character found himself at the epicenter of an inexplicable phenomenon. Subsequently, the whole house became like a vessel for a huge amount of energy. The building seemed to be transformed into a transmitter generating electricity. Opening the cabinets in the kitchen, Ji-hoo noticed the electrified dishes. And if this is really the case, then the guy is extremely lucky and no one will be able to break into his house. Ji lay down and began playing on the portable console, while the angry Chi continued to try in vain to break through. And no matter how much effort the spider made, she was never able to destroy the magical barrier. After some time, the main character became curious about what the stranger was doing. He went out into the yard and said that she would not be able to seduce him, which only angered her even more. At that moment, she lit up with a bright light. Jihu did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, dozens of threads of web flew out from Jier, which also did not break through the barrier. However, absolutely the entire protective field was shrouded in cobwebs. Chi said that since she couldn't get to him, then now he wouldn't be able to get out. Who asked why he had annoyed her so much, the girl replied that he had disgraced her, and she will wait until he comes out. The young man asked if she was born between August and September. The spider answered positively, asking a counter question why he was asking. Ji said that such a persistent girl must be a virgin, hinting at her innocence, which again angered Chi. The young lady began to say that guys were running after her in droves. At this time, voices began to be heard from afar. Someone ordered to surround the spider's lair. The main character, like Chi, didn't really understand what was happening. A couple of minutes later they saw a herd of bulls heading towards them, who assumed that they had actually come for her, regarding her future wedding. One of the animals kindly greeted the surprised girl. Then he asked her to go with him to the king to appear at the wedding ceremony. Chi asked if they were those stupid bulls. The leader answered positively, adding that they came by order of their king to take her to a most wonderful event. But the spider refused, saying that she would never marry their ruler. Then the bull ordered his subordinates to immediately grab the girl, saying that Ji-er is in vain to refuse, because their king is handsome and rich enough, and she shouldn't be so hot-tempered. Chi easily scattered everyone and replied that they were forcibly trying to steal a person and telling her about her temper. After which, calling herself a demon, she fixed her menacing gaze on their leader. Then the spider closed her palms and burst into flames. The animals did not know what to expect from her. A moment later, the girl generated two identical blades, calling on the bulls to accept the consequences of their rash actions. Brave Chi immediately rushed into a fierce battle against her ill-wishers. The girl literally destroyed an entire army of short-sighted demons. However, the bulls, in turn, did not want to retreat and continued to resist, to which the leader tirelessly urged them. The obedient animals fiercely rushed into battle, where Chi, with the help of her web and two swords, left them no chance of success. After some time, the spider killed absolutely the entire army of demons. The leader looked at his wounded and helpless brothers, after which, calling them stupid creatures, he looked menacingly at the girl. The bull said that he would now show how to act against a self-confident lady. Chi began to provoke him, but discovered that she had run out of web. Ultimately, the girl was caught, and no matter how hard she tried, she could no longer resist the bulls. At that moment, several of her charges ran up to her with a certain accessory. A second later, Jier was tied up and a festive kokoshnik was put on her head. Then the bull dragged her along with him. The little girls tried to recapture their sister from the demon, but could not defeat the huge brute. They began to bite into the legs and arms of the beast in order to somehow stop the bull. However, the animal simply scattered the defenseless children, taking Chi with it. The satisfied protagonist watched what was happening from the window, although he understood that the girl was in danger, but still she tried to kill him. At that moment, the leader of the herd noticed him. He handed the spider over to his minions and ordered them to take her to the king. He himself immediately rushed to attack the young guy, but he could not do this, since the magical barrier still did not allow ill-wishers inside. The embittered beast fought in vain against the protective field for several minutes. Ji, with a smile on his face, saw the bull's futile efforts. Suddenly the demon declared that he could not leave him alive, so as not to disgrace the honor of his king, after which he turned to his soldiers and ordered them to immediately kill the young man. After a few more minutes of effort, the fighters were literally exhausted. The angry bull called Hu to go outside. This infuriated the beast, who hastened to use his super ability. As a result, he increased significantly in size and acquired powerful hooves instead of arms. Subsequently, the furious demon rushed to destroy the protective barrier. But even having gained incredible power, he was unable to break through the magic field. Ji disconnected the mouse from the laptop and, with a lightning-quick movement of his hand, threw it at the irrepressible demon. Thus, the device turned into a snake, since it was a vessel of infinite energy. The mouse rushed towards the angry bull, and he, in turn, rushed to meet her. Before the collision, a bright light poured out of it, which blinded the beast. Then she created a vortex around him, as if she was trying to confuse the demon. After a couple of seconds, the mouse suddenly rushed at the bull and tied him up. The animal was stunned, and he ordered his idols not to stand still, but to immediately kill the young man. Jihu immediately ran for the keyboard and threw it into the crowd of armed bulls. As a result, the buttons began to separate from it and fall on the animals like a meteorite. The mutilated demons, in a fit of anger, declared that they would kill him when they caught him. In response, Hu brought a monitor and already intended to use it in the resulting confrontation. However, the animals made the only right decision and hastened to leave this location, declaring that their king would come for him. In their haste, they forgot to take Chi with them, whom the little sisters hurried to free. Having untied the spider, the little girls began to ask her if she was okay, but the older sister was unconscious and therefore could not answer. Ji recommended that they take it home and pour it over with warm water, and if that doesn't help, then he has magic oil. The sisters thanked him for his help and began to drag Chi into the lair. Hu noticed that it was extremely difficult for them to move with her, and besides, it suddenly snowed and the wind rose. In connection with this, the guy thought for a long time, but still decided to help the poor girls. Having dressed warmly, the main character ran out into the street and said that he would help them drag Jier home. He placed the spider on his back. One of the girls asked him why Chi never woke up. The young man said that she was unconscious. But if she still doesn't come to her senses, then he has CPR. The sister asked what it was, who didn't know how to explain to her. After which the talkative girls decided to meet the savior and took turns calling their names, Chen, Huang, Lu, Xing and Lan with Z. A few minutes later they reached the cave, where they hurried to enter. The sisters showed him where to place Jier and behaved quite hospitably. Jihu asked if demons like them don't live only by killing and stealing. The girls replied that they were used to it. Having added that there are few rich travelers now and therefore they have little food, they gave him a piece of bacon as a token of gratitude. Hu noticed that the meat had long since spoiled. At that moment the sisters said that they wanted to eat. Naturally, he felt sorry for the little ones, and he hurried home to get food, asking them to wait a little. After an hour, the kids thought that the young man would not come again and they scared him. Meanwhile, the main character just arrived in time with a backpack full of provisions and more. The sisters were in anticipation of what he brought them. The guy began to empty the briefcase, where there was a heater, a lamp for light and blankets with lots of different food. Who also brought a Barbie doll especially for the little ones and gave it to them. It hurt him to remember how he wanted to give this toy to his ex-girlfriend. One of the girls thanked him for his concern and grabbed the doll, calling him Big Brother. The sister thought it was food and tried to take a bite. Ji immediately began to cook. At this moment, Jier, whom he greeted, suddenly woke up. While Chi came to her senses and did not understand what was happening, she did not betray the presence of Jihu. However, after a couple of seconds, the girl attacked the young man with claims. The joyful sisters rushed to tell her that he was not their enemy, but on the contrary, Ji helped them. Looking around, the girl discovered various accessories necessary for everyday life. Jia realized that the young man really showed concern for her and her sisters. She approached the guy, after which Chi bowed low to him and thanked him for his help. After some time, Jihu prepared a lot of food and offered the girls a snack. The little sisters instantly attacked the table and in seconds destroyed everything that was there. Thus, one of them did not have enough food, and the baby began to cry. The main character calmed the child down and took out a lot more provisions from his backpack. Then, in a fairly cozy and family atmosphere, they began to have dinner. Just as Jihu wanted to ask Jier about this place, his little sister interrupted him. The little girl revealed all the information about Chi, that she is from Dongming Mountain and loves to seduce rich men. The elder sister immediately closed her mouth, who said that he would like to know about the place in which he found himself. Ji asked who the Bull King was who sent his minions after her. The children were again ahead of the curve and answered instead of Jier, saying that he was the king of the demons. The young man asked Chi in surprise. The no less surprised girl suggested that he knew him. Jihu stated that he had heard about these monsters, Yellow Robes and Lanrua Temple. The spider very convincingly advised him to stay away from them, after which the curious who asked what the name of this place was. The girls again answered in unison that this was a silk cave, which, in principle, could have been guessed. Who looked at Jir ambiguously and gently grabbed her shoulder, having advised not to mistake the priest who has 100 eyes on his body for his ally. After a certain time, they all decided to climb Mount Dongming together. Seeing the rice dumplings being cooked, Who asked if they were planning to steal them. The girl explained that the Duanwu festival was currently taking place, where anyone who came across an egg dumpling would be able to ask Chi for a favor. Everyone was waiting while the dumplings were mixed, when suddenly they were thrown into the air. The animals immediately rushed to catch the products, intending to find a dumpling with an egg. But no one was lucky enough to become a winner in this competition. Ji, in turn, called on everyone to calm down, saying that she would not marry any of them. One of Chi's sisters ran up to Jihu and handed him the treasured dumpling. The guy looked at it suspiciously, then took it and threw it aside. However, he fell straight into the spider, thereby putting both himself and her in an awkward position, because all the animals instantly chased after her in order to get the dumplings. The main character realized that she needed help and immediately mounted his mighty iron horse. Subsequently, Jir got on a motorcycle, and who took her in an unknown direction, away from the maddened animals. One of them demanded that the young man return the dumpling and the girl to him, but Ji had already disappeared. As it turned out later, Chen did not put eggs in any of the dumplings, because she simply does not like them. Accordingly, Jihu never found an egg inside the dumpling, which was quite disappointing. Meanwhile, it was already dark, and the young man wondered if he had crossed the line. After all, from now on he has no friends, no internet. In this case it's good to be an orphan, because no one will worry about him. Earlier, Chi told him about this world, where on the land of Kunwa demons fight among themselves for the right to become the ruler of the territories. In the south there was Lanrua Temple with 1,000-year-old monster and ghost girls, and the king of the bulls lives on Mount Sui. The girl was not shy and adjusted to alcohol, while simultaneously talking about the predatory continent, as well as Kunlun Mountain, Ame Park and the White Bone Cave with the Dragon Realm, who listened carefully about the underworld and the Sushan sword sect. Ji realized that the conflict between immortals and demons is inevitable, and except for the kingdom of the three heavens, everyone lives here. After which Chi hurried to sew clothes for her sisters, while the guy digested the information received. Jihu didn't know if he was suited to a world full of violence and treasure hunters. After some time, the girl returned tired, having used up all the silk web. The young man asked if she had always lived here with her sisters. Jia replied that it had always been like this, and one day she dreamed of a girl named Mom. Calling it fate, since she found these girls in the cave, Chi turned around and asked what was wrong with whose face. The main character wiped his tears and said that everything was fine. The spider decided to find out if he had a dream. Jihu literally froze in place and thought, after which he spoke rather uncertainly, that he dreams of having fun and enjoying life while staying at Dongming Mountain. Chi, in turn, wanted to take over the store where they sell powder. The young man again plunged into his thoughts and walked up to the edge of the mountain where they were and asked what she was dreaming about. Jia replied that she wanted more rich fools so she could get powder and raise her sisters. Then Hu admitted that he dreams of finding the one and marrying her in order to start a family like normal people. In response, the girl laughed and said that no one would marry him. Heading to his home, Ji understood perfectly well that he would not be able to enjoy life so easily, because Dongming Mountain was extremely dangerous. And when the monsters came to him, it was a matter of time, which means it was necessary to find something that would protect him. And even kitchen appliances and various items were quite suitable for protection. However, upon entering the house, Jihu discovered that there was less energy, and the vessels needed it. As a result, it was necessary to find another source of this same energy, especially since it was consumed very quickly. The next day, the main character ran into the cave to his newly made neighbor and gave her a cosmetic bag, asking him to tell him how to quickly get spiritual energy. Chi advised Hu to simply steal the soul stones in which it was stored from someone, or by demons in the city, where she and her sisters often visit, and therefore, she invited Ji to join them. The guy agreed. The spider noted the rather large backpack on his back. The young man said that 2 refrigerators would fit there, after which they got on Jihu's mighty motorcycle and went to the city of monsters. They literally hovered in the air, gaining enormous speed. The girl's clothes even began to fall off, and she asked Hu to slow down her bike. After some time, Ji asked where the city was. Chi replied that it was right in front of his nose. Having arrived closer to the settlement, the main character was extremely surprised. Because the city looked more like an ordinary market, because apart from the stalls of traders, there was practically nothing. Jier noticed that they are demons, not cultivators, so they are content with little. Meanwhile, the sisters brought the carpet, and the spider began to preen herself. The young man did not understand what was going on and asked her. The girl, looking at him, smiled sweetly and said that now there would be a reincarnation. A coffin suddenly appeared. Then they fell to their knees and began to cry, offering to buy the widow and 6 girls for several hundred stones in order to raise money for the funeral. Ji asked if they were able to make money like this. Chi replied that only travelers can be deceived, because others know them. At that moment, demons approached them and asked to sell 50 spirit stones. The spider immediately drove them away. The upset Jier noticed that today was clearly not their day, because there was no profit. Who, in turn, tried to calm the girl down, since he would still receive the stones next year. At this time, a huge demon suddenly flew out of the water, like a geyser. The large turtle appeared in front of the surprised crowd. Jihu also did not understand what was happening. The monster hoped to get rich, but other demons tried to resist him. Chi promptly intervened in the situation and eliminated one of them. The turtle said that he saw a swordsman on the mountain who intended to capture Dongming with the foxes from Nanyan Cave. Everyone began to ask her what level of cultivation this monster had. The turtle assumed that he was of the middle mortal realm. Jier explained to Hu that all demons are divided into levels of different gradations, and that priest is most likely the strongest of them all. The monsters noted their hopelessness, especially since the spider had the highest cultivation among them. The turtle said that that priest was also very rich and spent 500 stones on foxes. Chi immediately called on everyone to find and kill him, adding that she was owed 80% of the spoils, and they were owed 20. The perplexed protagonist asked what he should do and how to help. The little sisters dragged their older brother along with them, giving him a wooden stick as a weapon. Having gone deeper into the forest, Jier began to slow down and move more carefully, as if she felt someone approaching. At that moment, they heard horses galloping in the distance. Chi immediately jumped onto a tree. Then she called on all the demons to prepare for a surprise attack. The turtle discovered that the carriage on which the cultivator was riding was from the heavenly workshop. This was the demon lord of 1,000 eyes. He arrived on the orders of the cult to expand the borders, as the monster proudly declared. The alarmed foxes asked him what he wanted to do with them. The lord urged them to be obedient girls. He reached out to one of them, but the beauty turned away, asking him to stop behaving like that. Jihu could not even imagine that he would soon meet the one about whom he had only recently told the spider. The turtle noticed that he looked like an 800-year-old cultivator. Chi urged them not to be afraid of the Lord. The self-confident girl rushed towards the demon, but Hu grabbed her leg and asked her not to rush. After asking if she really wanted to rob him, Jier stated that the Lord intended to capture Mount Dongmin and therefore must die. The main character noted that initially she needed to cook a couple of chickens. The spider exchanged glances with the turtle, after which she had a question for Wan. The beast hesitated at first, as if he did not know what to answer the girl. Then, rummaging through his things, he showed her a bag of tied chickens. She turned to her fighters and ordered them to attack the arrogant lord. Everyone instantly took off, rushing towards the demon. The smiling lord, in turn, invited Jier to become his little sister. In response, the spider threw a mountain of web over him to limit his actions. The remaining demons hastened to surround the monster, thereby catching him by surprise. One of the Chi sisters noticed that their older brother warned them about meeting this monster. All the monsters wanted to destroy the Lord while Jier was giving orders. She asked some to stun the demon, while others to go around from behind. This was a kind of tactic. Still others were required to use healing magic to restore the health of the warriors. In general, it was like a computer game. It seemed that the Lord had come to an end, because all the animals dealt extremely painful blows every second. For some time they were quite successful in beating the helpless lord. The demon, in turn, could no longer stand on his feet and fell to his knees, the ground beneath him literally bursting at the seams. Suddenly one of the blows hit him in the head, blood began to pour all over his face, and then the monster got angry. The monster shouted loudly that they forced him to take extreme measures. Some animals began to scatter in different directions. Jihu warned them about this demon's secret technique, urging them to be on guard. At that moment, the spider attacked him with another attack, but the Lord unexpectedly exposed his torso. With a bright light, he literally blinded the surrounding animals. There were dozens of eyes on his body. No one could understand what it was. The sisters closed their eyes in fear. At this time, Hu threw a bag of chickens at the Lord and called on the animals not to retreat. The demon was perplexed, after which Chi instantly threw another batch of webs at him. The stunned monster asked the young guy how he found out about this. Ji's sisters answered instead of their older brother, saying that it didn't matter and that he would die. The main character drew attention to the animals standing behind and ordered them to immediately attack the Lord. This is what the demons eventually began to do, but the cultivator skillfully dealt with them. The monster actively used its abilities in confrontation with them. The animals decided to simultaneously attack him from different sides, so they knocked him to the ground. After which the rest fell on him in a heap. It seemed the Lord was defeated. However, a moment later he turned into a huge insect resembling a scolopendra and easily got out. The animals began to run away in fear, which the spider did not like. Jir ordered them not to be cowardly and to go on the attack, assuring them that they had a chance to defeat him. But what was happening indicated the opposite. The Lord, with lightning-fast movements, destroyed the demons, one after another. The monsters still tried to resist him, but the cultivator was superior to them in strength. The wounded animals demanded that the healers heal them immediately, but the healers had run out of energy, and health regeneration was impossible. Then the spider rushed into battle, but even she could not inflict proper damage on the Lord. Jumping back, she noticed that this demon was extremely strong and could not cope with him so easily. They also did not have healing pills due to their high cost. There seemed to be no chance of success. The monster, in turn, felt superior and only pressed on them more. Chi was wondering whether to use her secret technique. At that moment Jihu called out to them. The young man said that he could create healing capsules using the necessary ingredients. However, Jir sadly said that it was better for him to take Sister Z with him and run away. Hu replied that he had a pill furnace, after which the guy began looking for it in his bottomless backpack. Finally, Ji took out something that looked like a saucepan. She noticed that it was not an alchemical furnace, but some kind of pot. The young man objected, calling it an electric rice cooker, although it really does look like a pot. The girl noticed that the oven for the capsules must be huge. Hu objected again, assuring that they could cook in small ones too. The spider said that fire was needed. Jihu explained that the stove was electric, and did not need it. Meanwhile, the Lord was destroying the remnants of the demon army, which meant that they would not last long. The main character demanded that Chi give him the necessary ingredients. Jir immediately handed them to him, and the guy put everything into the rice cooker. After some time, the mobile oven started smoking without having cooked anything. Chi freaked out and ordered the young man to take her sisters and leave here immediately. However, Jihu did not listen to her and waited for the pills to be prepared. Hu was confident that more time was needed to successfully boil the capsules. After a few minutes, the rice cooker actually signaled that the capsules were ready. Opening it, they found multicolored pills. Jir was shocked. Taking one, she asked how he managed to do this using a fake oven. At that moment, a wounded demonic bear landed at their feet with a crash. The spider hurried to give him one of the capsules, which instantly raised him to his feet. After which the beast, enraged and full of strength, grabbed a huge stone and headed towards the Lord. Chi was stunned by the pill's effect and couldn't understand what happened to him. At this time, the demon attacked the self-confident monster with a cobblestone in his hands. Jir asked Ji if these were really medicinal capsules. The young man replied that these were special capsules and it all depended on the character of the person taking it. The spider realized that he himself did not know what kind of pill would be prepared, which is what Hu asked, but at that moment a wounded beast flew towards them. Chi said sadly that the boar's wounds were much more serious than the bear's. The girl immediately gave the necessary ingredients to the guy so that he could prepare a few more capsules. After a couple of minutes, they took out a suspicious colored pill from the rice cooker, not knowing its properties. But this wasn't a big problem, because they weren't the ones who would accept it. After which Jir opened the demon's mouth, and Jihu threw a capsule down his throat. After a couple of seconds, the crazed monster flew into the air, and his wounds instantly healed. The boar itself acquired unprecedented power, which he felt a minute later. The beast immediately attacked the perplexed lord with a series of attacks, demanding to release the flower demon. The spruce cultivator managed to fight off the lightning strikes of the brutal boar. Having released the flower monster from his hands, he began to confront the ferocious monster. Jihu noticed that when wounded, the beast fought the lord extremely effectively. Meanwhile, Chi remembered these capsules that reduce yang. The main character did not understand what the spider was talking about and asked her again. Jir explained that although these capsules are better than medicinal ones and their effect is amazing, they affect male strength. Hu began to think, and then he realized what exactly the girl meant and was horrified. The flower demon vehemently rooted for the boar and declared that if he won this fight, she would marry him. However, the monster noted that having dealt with the lord, he would marry Chi, which she personally very much doubted. The bear, in turn, did not like the fact that all the glory could go to the boar. Moreover, he did not want to admit that Chi and the flower demon could fall in love with this pig. The rest of the animals shared the opinion of the clubfoot and rushed into battle with him. Ji asked Jir where she got so many ingredients if she didn't have money. The girl replied that she collected them. Meanwhile, the lord continued to scatter some of the mutants. The spider hurried to distribute a new batch of pills to the fighters. Chi noticed that some animals significantly increased their strength with the help of these capsules. The turtle is by nature extremely slow, but with the pill it became incredibly fast. It is worth noting that there were also those who acquired the magical abilities of lightning and fire, but some were much less fortunate, because it depended on who received them. Jir fed a huge number of monsters with capsules and ordered them to kill the lord, which is what the animals began to do, causing significant damage to the no longer so powerful demon. At a certain moment, an angry bear came to their aid, who nailed the wounded monster to the ground with another cobblestone. Everyone watched what was happening in surprise. It seemed that the lord would not survive. However, suddenly he dived into the ground. One would think that he had decided to retreat. But in fact, the demon intended to attack the main character, which is what the boar thought. He shouted at Jihu to run away immediately. The guy was at a loss. A couple of seconds later, a monster flew out of the ground and tried to attack the young man, but who managed to jump back. Then he threw a mouse and keyboard at him, which tied him up and caused considerable damage. From a powerful mutant lord, he turned into a victim. His body suddenly took on a human form. The defeated demon lay on the ground. But, nevertheless, finding strength within himself, the embittered monster again rushed to attack Jihu. The spider understood that she had to save the guy, and as soon as the lord tried to hit the young man, the inexplicable happened. Ji doused him with ordinary milk, and subsequently the bewildered monster froze in place. No matter how hard he tried, the demon could not move and did not understand what had happened. As a result, he gradually began to turn to stone. Everyone was shocked and also did not understand what Hu had done. The main character, in turn, doused him with milk again so that the petrification would surely take effect. Chi asked him how he turned him into stone and what kind of liquid it was. Jihu answered, it was milk with melamine, and he found it at home when he was cleaning, and as a result, expired milk became a magical object. The animals immediately began to search the defeated lord, and found a certain ring. He also had a letter with him. Jir tried to read it, but could not do it. The monsters looked at the girl in extreme surprise. She asked why they were looking at her like that. Hu asked if she really couldn't read. Chi replied that it didn't matter. The guy instantly snatched the letter from her and began to study it. From the letter it became known that the Lord Master of the two-headed snake of the Taoist Federation and the head ordered him to capture this place. After which the young man asked if any of them knew about this federation. Everyone silently shook their heads. The spider pulled a piece of paper out of his hands and tore it, declaring that it didn't matter. The main thing was the heavenly carriage. The animals decided to strip the beaten lord naked and began to pull off his pants. Then the rest of the things, trying to find something interesting or expensive. Meanwhile, Hu became thirsty and began drinking expired milk. Chi was at a loss, and she asked the spirits of the forest to check the guy if everything was okay with him. Ji showed them his purple tongue. The next morning, the main character woke up in his house and went about his usual business. He didn't have to do anything as the flying brush cleaned his teeth and the towel wiped his face. Suddenly Jihu heard the noise of the crowd and became curious about what was going on. The young man looked out the window and found a huge line of people outside his house, where Chi collected 10 soul stones per entry, and those who wanted to go out of line had to pay 20. At that moment, Hu came out to her and asked what she was doing. As it turned out, Jir had created a business for him to make pills. And since he needs magic stones, he will start selling magic capsules. Ji stated his low level of skill in creating pills. The spider explained that in their world, few people know how to produce them. Therefore, it is better for him not to lose such a chance to earn money, especially since he can sell them at exorbitant prices. However, Hu said that his capsules depend on who takes them and he is not responsible for the effect. Ji-Hu began to prepare a capsule to clearly show what he was telling them. After a while, the main character brought out his rice cooker and began to prepare the pills, adding that under normal conditions it was possible to create several pieces, but otherwise you would have to rely on luck. But to the guy's surprise, the capsule was still successfully prepared. The boar noticed that everything was working out for him. The young man called it pure luck. After which he said that the next one would definitely not be able to be created, but the pill was prepared. This time it was blue. Chi said that it could be used to increase energy. The animals began to say that such a treasure could even cost 500 stones, while Ji did not understand why there was never a failure. After waiting a few more minutes for the rice cooker to smoke, Hu thought that it would not be possible to create a medicine now. But the furnace managed to surprise them by preparing hundreds of different pills, which the animals began to collect. Then the boar decided to try his luck, but other than energy-restoring capsules, nothing worked. But after trying again, he created a pill of easy walking, for which he could buy an entire house. The demon thanked the guy and Ji-Hu hurried to go home, asking the others to come the next day. Since the young man was tired, he decided to rest a little in nature and fry some meat. In general, Chi and Hu got rich on pills, and with the help of stones, Ji was going to increase the level of one of his magic items. But he didn't know what exactly to choose. After thinking a little, the young man finally decided. And he decided to improve his furnace, believing that in this way he would create better quality pills. The main character applied magic runes to the rice cooker and it began to shine sharply. However, nothing happened. Hu realized that more stones were needed and threw more. Suddenly a strong wind arose, and then a powerful whirlwind formed, whirling the stove in the air. A moment later, a mobile oven fell into Ji's hands, in a slightly different form. At this time, a group of unknown people flew up to him, standing on swords, and the young man suspected something was wrong. The girl asked Hu if he had seen a Taoist in a yellow robe, called the Thousand-Eyed Demon. Confused, the guy hesitated to answer, and then still said that he had never seen anything like this. The young man then immediately ran to his bike, realizing that they were now in trouble. However, the girl realized that he had deceived her and hurried to attack Ji. She released her hair pins at him, which seemed to fall from the sky like a meteorite. At that moment, a cloud suddenly formed behind her and a strange voice spoke. The unknown person began to mutter something incomprehensible. They did not understand who it was. Turning around, the girl noticed the silhouette of a demon, who asked if she had a boyfriend. A moment later, a young guy appeared in front of her with a fan and a certain book in his hands. He greeted her kindly, stating that they were destined to meet and asked if she was married. The stranger answered rather rudely that it was none of his business, but the young man still did not let up. Suddenly the fan fell out of his hand, and the unknown person reacted rather strangely to this. After which he suddenly grabbed her hand. The girl did not understand what was happening. The guy said that he was quite handsome and rich, and with him she would not know sadness. The main character, watching from the sidelines, noticed that this was the first time he had seen such a crazy marriage proposal. Finally, the lady disentangled herself from the arms of the annoying young man and took the hairpin out of her hair. She immediately threw a spear at him, but he managed to dodge. The warriors immediately pointed their blades at him, accusing him of flirting with their peach garden maiden. As a result, the masters hastened to attack such a dull stranger. Dozens of swords flew towards him, but the young man quite skillfully dodged them. One of the blades nevertheless landed in the notebook of an unknown person, and it literally crumbled in his hands. Then snakes went into battle and bit him, thereby tearing his clothes. What drove the smiling young man not so long ago into a rage? His eyes flared with fire. After which the guy quickly dealt with all the snakes. And a second later, using his abilities, he increased in size. And having already appeared as a huge demon, he hurried to attack the unlucky warriors. The frightened girl, in turn, tried to escape by jumping on her sword and flying into the distance. But the irrepressible stranger managed to catch her. He said that she could not get away from him so easily. The lady said that even if he gets her body, he will never get her heart. The guy tied her up and noticed that no one is interested in a woman's heart. After which, calling her his 16th wife, the unknown person dragged the girl away with him. Ji was well aware that this demon was clearly stronger than those he met on his way. And in order not to fall under the hot hand, the main character went home on his motorcycle. However, after driving a couple of meters, he was stopped by that very stranger, who decided to pretend that he liked the young man's marriage proposal. Adding that it was the best offer he had seen, the guy noted the extremely dissatisfied lady in his arms. Jihu said that she simply did not understand her happiness, because his words contained romance and realism, with notes of wildness. Also, the young man extremely successfully combined classicism and modernism. In general, Ji praised him as best he could. The man noticed that he didn't understand what he was talking about, but it sounded really good, agreeing that no one appreciates his kindness, but this is the key to seduction. Who had no choice but to approve the stranger's words. Suddenly the guy hugged Ji and declared that only he understood him. Then the young man tied the girl to a tree and hurried to make another proposal, and Jihu would explain to him if she did not appreciate his attempts. Climbing onto the cloud, they headed into the spider cave. The man said that last time a certain kid prevented him from seducing Chi. The main character realized that we were talking about him and asked what his name was. The guy proudly called himself a bull, the king of demons. According to legend, the bull was married to Princess Fong, but lately he has been lonely, because his wives run away from him every time. He began to complain to Hu that his 8th wife ran away with the turtle. Ji tried in every possible way to calm the guy down. The bull said that he heard that girls liked scientists, and therefore dressed accordingly. Meanwhile, the animals, concerned about the sudden disappearance of the young man, expressed their dissatisfaction with Chi, because they needed pills. Flying closer to the cave, the bull noticed that Ji had become much more beautiful since their last meeting. A moment later, the bull and Hu landed near the spider's lair. The girl did not understand why Ji was next to him. The young suitor decided to read his poem to the girl, where he confessed his love to her. However, no one was able to appreciate it, realizing that poetry was clearly not his strong point. The persistent bull nevertheless asked if the spider was ready to marry him. Jia replied that this would never happen. Suddenly Shu said that her sister already liked one guy. The young man became furious. At this moment, another sister said that this person was Hu, because Chi constantly admires the mirror that he gave her. The little girl said that Jia knitted clothes for him from her web, after which the little pest showed her sewn-up panties to the angry bull. All the animals were shocked and looked at the spider in surprise. Chi, in turn, noted that she had only sewn up his underwear. The younger sister pointed her finger at the main character and said that he was brother Ji. The bull was in despair, realizing that he had been deceived and even began to imagine them together. Jihu tried to calm him down and assured him that they were just friends, but he misunderstood everything. But the embittered demon said that after this he has no right to be called brother, after which he pulled out his axe and hastened to attack young Casanova. However, whose motorcycle saved his life by driving over the maddened bull. Ji, in turn, grabbed the bike and hurried away, saying that he could explain everything to him. But the monster did not listen to him and turned into a huge and strong bull. The guy realized that at the moment there was no point in explaining himself, and tried to hide. The enraged bull, in turn, threw an axe in his direction, who managed to dodge. However, the weapon followed him. The surprised protagonist accelerated. The axe cut down all the trees in its path, chasing after Ji. The guy assumed that the bull was from the axe gang. The spider watched from the side and realized that he needed help. Chi called on the animals to help him, but they refused. The girl noticed that if the bull killed him, there would be no more pills. And only then did the demons move, trying to stop the embittered monster. But the mutant king and Jihu were already far away, and it was impossible to catch up with them. Meanwhile, Hu advised the bull to find Fong in a cave located in the south of the continent, which angered the already enraged horned demon even more. At this moment, he began to actively use his abilities. The young man did not understand what was happening. After seeing the bull's transformation, Chi urged Ji to be extremely careful. A moment later, the monster turned into a large cow, which was a rather strange decision. Who, in turn, was amused by such a transformation. The beast noticed that he had a close connection with a distant clan of cows in the west. The smiling Jihu sincerely congratulated him on this and hurried to leave. But the cow caught up with him in seconds and hit the motorcycle, which the guy never expected. Subsequently, the bike and the main character rolled head over heels on the ground. The motorcycle hit the ground in a characteristic way and flew up into the air, while the flight path was extremely dangerous. Since the device was flying straight towards Chi became nervous and called out to him in concern, who managed to press himself against the rock, but the motorcycle barricaded him and the guy got stuck. Ji tried to move the transport away with the help of a web. Meanwhile, the bull was getting closer and menacingly shouting insulting phrases at the young man. Running up to him, the angry demon wanted to avenge his beloved. At that moment something flew at him, but the monster managed to dodge. Turning around, he noticed an unknown flying machine, which began to literally suck him inside. The bull could not resist this incomprehensible magic. Finally, the rice cooker pulled the monster into itself and closed the lid, at which time the boar helped the guy get out from under the bike. Trapped in a flaming prison, the beast demanded that who release it immediately. The main character decided to teach the horned monster a lesson and increased the temperature in the oven. After which the rice cooker smoked, all the demons breathed a sigh of relief. Chi asked why the bull said that he had betrayed him. Ji explained the whole situation about the Taoists arriving in these parts and the appearance of a horned monster. At that moment, Jihu remembered the girl tied to a tree in the forest and invited the animals to drag her here. There were a lot of people who wanted to rescue the girl, and therefore they immediately rushed into the forest. After some time, the monsters returned, but could not find anyone. The young man thought that they had already come for her. Ji stated that they would kill anyone who sets foot on their land, who urged her to be careful, because this federation is extremely dangerous. Suddenly their dialogue was interrupted by hungry sisters who asked and they would have lunch. At this time, Chi noticed a cicada crawling out of the rice cooker, which she told the guy about. Jihu turned around and saw the insect suddenly jump off the stove and fly away. After which he turned into a bull. He stood proudly on his cloud, his eyes filled with blood. At a certain moment, the demon rushed to attack. Ji miraculously managed to escape, because Jir used her web to pull him aside. Other animals were much less fortunate. They took the bull's strongest blow upon themselves. It seemed that even the mountains shook along with the earth and trees. As soon as the monster approached the young man raised the rice cooker above his head. The demon did not want to return to the 100-degree prison and hurried to escape. As he left, he stated that he would soon regain his strength and next time he would come with an entire army. And the beast advised the spider to prepare for their wedding ceremony, after which she would become his 17th wife. The boar answered for everyone that he would never get Chi's hand and heart in his life. He then asked Li to inform the Wolf King on Mount Wangu to send his warriors to their aid. It was also necessary to involve all allies from various places on the continent. They even came up with a name for their murderous squad, calling themselves the Defenders of Chi. Ji noticed that she has quite a large number of fans, because everyone admires her. Thus, in December of the year 839, demons and spirits announced that they needed to protect Jir. Kings and generals from different regions came to their aid, in the form of a lion, a bear and a snake with a shrimp. The lion and the snake immediately began to sort things out, which of them was more suitable for the role of the spider's husband. The king of snakes noticed that the lion couldn't even write a love letter properly. The lion, in turn, realized that it was the General Shrimp who dared to open his letter, and rushed at him with his fists. The main character called on them to calm down, because they would kill each other before the bull army arrived. But they did not pay attention to him, and the young man decided to get away from these stupid creatures. And he noticed Chi playing with his sisters, chasing them around the clearing by the lake. Jir saw Jihu hiding behind a tree and called out to him. The guy came up to her, who once again noted the amazing devotion of all the demons who were ready to even give their lives for her. The girl replied that she had known the pig for a long time. They met when she helped him deal with 2 trees. She knew the snake from the time of his awakening. At that moment she took the blow upon herself. In general, she fed Leo almost from childhood, because his parents abandoned him for an unknown reason. Ji asked how she helped General Prawn. Jir smiled. Then she replied that the shrimp was simply in love with her, and had been for quite some time. At that moment, a boar approached them and said that he would always protect her and was grateful for everything. The shrimp once again reminded Chi that the only thing missing for their wedding was her consent. At that moment someone hit him. As a result, a fight broke out again, in order to find out which of them was the more worthy contender for the beauty. Meanwhile, Jihu suggested that the spider move to another place where they could live next door. The girl noticed that this is not as simple as it seems, because wherever they go, it is very dangerous. The main character quite sincerely said that he would feed her when she and her sisters ran out of food. Then he rephrased that he meant help with provisions, and not what she might have thought about. However, Chi stated that she did not need his help, and she even blushed. At this time, the beaten boar literally crawled out of a 2-hour brawl with the animals, who asked him whether he could really defeat the bull and his army. The demon thought about it and the guy realized that he still had doubts. He explained that the king's power was too great, but on the White Bone Mountain lived a powerful lady who could help them. As a result, they set off on their way to the mysterious woman. At that moment huge bone fangs suddenly appeared from the ground. Ji instantly set into motion, and they rushed into the distance. As it turned out, large skeletons were running after them. The boar, in turn, began to urge the young man on, because his future bride, Kiwa, was waiting for him. Having escaped from the demons, they passed through an ominous wasteland, who could not understand why she lived in such a strange place. Jihu asked if she would definitely help them. The demon replied that it all depends on her mood. Arriving at the foot of the cliff, they saw a corpse hanging on a tree with a sign where it was written that he disturbed the peace and paid for it. The boar noticed that if she was in a good mood, then everything would be fine. A few minutes later they climbed up a long ladder and stood opposite the entrance to the cave. Suddenly the boar ran away, saying that he needed to return to Chi and help her. Before leaving, he named the name of the ruler of these lands. Her name was Shurji. The guy remembered that this lady had once been burned. He had no choice but to continue his journey alone. Guards met him at the entrance. They asked who he was. Who said that he had arrived from Dongming Mountain. Without allowing him to finish, the warriors showed the way to the mistress. Ji headed through the dark and cold corridors of the cave, looking for Shurji. There were a lot of human remains around, which created a rather creepy atmosphere. At a certain moment, Jihu reached a room with a green glow and went inside. Where there was a long line waiting for the sorceress to appear, the young man could not understand why such a pandemonium had formed. A moment later, the guards carried out the royal palanquin. Everyone began to say that it was she. The warriors placed the palanquin on the ground and walked away, after which there was deathly silence. For some time, all the demons simply silently waited for Shurji's orders. Suddenly, a female voice said that she was not in the mood, and therefore, she ordered the guards to kill everyone with even numbers in the queue. People obediently fulfilled the whim of their ruler. The monsters were at a loss and said that this was unfair. Everyone was then called to immediately fall silent to greet Lady Shurji. The girl opened the curtain and appeared in front of the waiting demons. She was lying carefree on the bed and eating cookies. Jihu saw such a picture for the first time. The mistress cast her gaze at the monsters, continuing to defiantly eat the sweets. One of the guards plucked up courage and reproached her for the image in which she appeared before everyone. Shurji's reaction was not long in coming. The girl literally flew into a rage, declaring that she had not seen the sun for many years. At that moment, lightning fell from heaven onto the mountain. They pierced the cave and several demons with guards were electrocuted. The main character managed to hide behind a rock with one of the frightened monsters. Who said that the legend turned out to be true? Ji asked what he was talking about. Beast explained that she once experienced some kind of key deviation and her personality was split, which is why Shurji is so unpredictable. Who suggested that she was of an earthly level and was most likely afraid to go out into the world because she was unable to control her emotions. At that moment, one of the lightning strikes the demon who told the legend. The lady, in turn, spewed lightning. One of the guards quickly gave her medicine, and after a couple of seconds she felt better. The girl stopped freaking out and returned to her bed, after which she asked forgiveness from everyone present, noting that it was extremely difficult for her to control herself. After eating the cookies, she summed up that this happens to her, so you shouldn't pay attention to it. At this time, a demon fearfully approached her and presented her with a certain thing. Shurji stated that he would not receive help from her for this item. adding that she doesn't need money and whoever makes her laugh within 15 minutes is the one she will help. There were no people willing to be the first clown for the mistress, and therefore Sher said that if she counted to 3 and no one would start. Suddenly one of the animals interrupted her and declared that he would be the first to try to cheer her up. However, the joke he began to tell turned out to be absolutely not funny, moreover, boring and quite long. Without waiting for the end of the story, the mistress ordered several arrows to be shot at him, which is what the guards ultimately did. The rest of the group had even less of a desire to surprise the princess. Pointing her fingers at one of the demons, the girl ordered him to make her laugh. The next applicant for pardon failed this exam at the cost of his life, as he began to dance ridiculously. The obedient warriors immediately took the loser out of the cave and eliminated him. The next lucky guy said that he had learned a folk song and was going to demonstrate his talent to it. Shurji didn't even let him start before she already ordered her big men to get rid of his presence. The other fell at her feet and sobbed, saying that he only knew how to show tricks. The princess was saddened again and killed the monster, calling them all quite boring. She then pointed to the main character and said that it was his turn to amuse the ruler. Jihu pretended that he didn't understand who she was saying this to and asked her again in a trembling voice. The impudent and arrogant girl said that he had 10 seconds during which he must cheer her up. Who was literally sweating out of excitement. He didn't know any jokes about songs or dances. While the young man was wondering how he could get out of the situation, Shurji noted that time was up. Then she called the guards to kill the mediocre guy. Ji urged them to wait. The warriors were at a loss, but still decided to give him one last chance. Who began to frantically search for something in his bottomless backpack, not knowing whether it would help in this case or not. A minute later, the main character took out a laptop from his bag and showed it to the fastidious woman. The guards asked what it was. The guy answered, it was a laptop. The servant brought a chair to Jihu and closely watched what the young man was doing, who decided to play a famous video game, hoping it would work and entertain Sher. He gave her a joystick, took it for himself and began to tell the rules of this game, where they must control 2 characters and fight various evil spirits. Having shown which buttons to press, the guy asked her to imagine that these people were cultivators. However, while killing enemies and dodging traps, Shurji became so carried away that she began to nervously click on all the buttons. The girl literally got excited. Ji immediately urged her to calm down, saying that she had 3 lives and could always start over. A certain amount of time passed in an exciting game, but Sher did little. One of the guards had the temerity to ask her for a joystick to help her, and he paid for this not with his virtual life. The ruler fired lightning at him, and the warrior fell to the ground. At the same time, Shurji hit the buttons quite quickly and hard. The guy asked her not to do this, since he only had 2 joysticks. Moreover, even if she loses, Ji can give her his character with 3 lives. What happened a couple of minutes later? The girl demanded a joystick from him. The young man naturally gave it to her. But she managed to screw up here too. The angry person began to say that she had been cultivating for more than 3,000 years, and this was some kind of game. The main character immediately reassured her, saying that he had a way out of this situation, after which he took the joystick and set another 30 lives so that she would certainly have enough. The already joyful lady said that he should have done this much earlier. Jihu noted that they now have 59 lives between them, and that should be enough. The engaged mistress continued to actively hit the buttons and began to progress over time. Yet she is a powerful demon who rules the mountain of ghosts in the eastern lands. At this time, another guard began to give her advice. Sher ordered everyone to shut up, and after a few minutes she successfully completed the game, completing all the levels, which is what she screamed joyfully about. Leaving the game, she found other files on the desktop and asked what they were. Jihu replied that this game doesn't work and she should start with something easier. The guy asked how she was feeling. The girl was delighted with the completion of the video game. Sher even deigned to pay him 3,000 magic stones, but who said that he had one request for her. The smiling ruler said that she would fulfill any of his wishes, naturally within reason. Ji identified himself as a cultivator from the Spider Cave, which is located on Dongming Mountain. And recently, a bull with a huge army came to him from Mount Kuiwei to wreak havoc, and within 3 days he will return. Shurji stated that this was an easily solved problem and he would deal with this little upstart. Having offered the guy 2 developments to resolve this issue, the first option works only temporarily, while the other is beneficial to everyone. sure can send an army and give magic items, or find elixirs with which they can deal with the bull. But this takes time, and she also needs to get to Amei Peak where she lost hers. The main character agreed to go to Amei Peak in search of magic elixirs. He took his backpack and left. Shurji specifically sent him to get drugs so that she could calmly play on her favorite laptop. Jihu made his way through many obstacles to get the much-needed elixirs. And he even almost died when he tried to climb Amei Peak. The guy managed to grab onto a hanging tree. After some time, with a lot of effort, the young man was still able to climb the mountain. With a stunning view, who couldn't take his eyes off the beauty? Suddenly, the amulet that Shurji gave him led him along. The guy quickly chased after him. As soon as Ji remembered his iron partner, he heard the sound of a motor. Turning around, the main character discovered a motorcycle and got on the bike with great pleasure. After which I went after the magic amulet. Naturally the path became much easier. A few minutes later, the amulet led him to an unknown temple, where the elixirs were supposedly located. At that moment, Jihu heard extraneous sounds. As it turned out they were Taoists. They flew on their swords and landed near a mysterious building. The young man thought that it would be nice if a bull appeared now and started pestering her so that he could take the elixirs without any problems. One of them seemed to hear the guy and turned in his direction, but did not find anyone. Since who covered himself with tree branches in an extremely timely manner, the presence of the Taoists was quite suspicious. After they entered the temple, Ji decided to eavesdrop on their conversation and took off his headphones. He sent them through the air directly into the building, and a moment later they entered the room unnoticed. Besides the fact that Jihu could hear what the cultists were talking about, he also saw what was happening inside. An unknown girl called everyone to silence in anticipation of a major conversation between the two-headed snake of the Taoist Federation, after which she asked to greet the immortal head of the Eastern Branch, named Qijiao. A large and muscular man with a beard defiantly walked out to them. He was immediately offered to drink tea. The immortal knocked over the cup and thanked him, after which he said that the planned collection this year had begun, and he was grateful to them for their efforts, adding that the last year has been really fruitful and with the help of the Federation and teamwork they have achieved success. Qijiao said that there are three most important things to know. People, in turn, were delighted and applauded him, shouting the name of the master. The bishop continued that each topic includes 6 subtopics, which are divided into 12 points. Qijiao's story was indeed too boring and the warriors began to fall asleep. The head of the Eastern Branch understood this very well, and therefore stopped his story. The girl noticed that the immortal's speech was impressive and hastened to add something of her own. People again grabbed their heads, believing that morality would drag on for hours, but she turned the conversation to the distribution of the annual bonus. Naturally, everyone perked up and wanted to know what reward was due to them. The master waved his hand, and the snake's eyes lit up. At that moment, a long python came out and soared in the air, impressing the people. Meanwhile, the main character's magical amulet suddenly flew towards the temple. Who suggested that the elixirs were inside the long python? Qijiao noticed that this python was filled with elixirs and various materials from bones to flesh. People were delighted with such a gift and thanked the master for his generosity. The cultivator said that he grabbed this snake while passing by Amei Peak, all thanks to the leader of the Federation and his extremely useful instructions. One of the warriors asked how they should share these rewards. Qijiao said that there was no problem. After which, drawing more air into his lungs, the head blew out fire, which enveloped the python. Since this was necessary in order to get the fiery elixir, after some time, the kite hovered in the air, ending up in a characteristic vessel. The master continued to feed it with fire, and the python, in turn, began to hiss. Then he spat out several long-awaited elixirs. The people were impressed by what was happening. Suddenly, the snake was enveloped by a magical ball, which seemed to be impervious to fire. The head noted that this monster lived for about 1,000 years, who also wanted to get his hands on magic potions. But if he steals them, he will anger the Federation. However, without doing this, it will be difficult to defeat the bull. Ji was well aware that attacking directly was not a good idea. It was necessary to divert their attention. Moreover, they are full of powerful warriors, and they also have an immortal cultivator. The main character climbed the stairs and thought about his further plan of action. Meanwhile, the python's resistance had decreased significantly, and Qijiao called on everyone to help him. The warriors also directed their fiery powers at the unyielding python. The head of the eastern branch said that there was very little left. At a certain moment, the master heard extraneous sounds, not understanding what was happening. The assistant immediately conducted reconnaissance using her paper airplane, but having flown around the surroundings of the temple, it was not possible to find anyone. People thought it was a ghost. Qijiao headed to the exit to check for himself. Approaching the front doors, he heard a voice talking about some kind of delivery. With a lightning movement of his hand, the head destroyed the door, but did not see anyone behind it, which was quite strange. The master said that the one who decided to play them was a brave fool, and ordered the stranger to appear. The girl found an unknown box on the stairs and showed it to Qijiao. It was from her that this voice came, talking about some kind of sendings. The head did not understand what was happening. A moment later, he realized that they had been deliberately lured outside, and therefore hurried back to the temple. At this time, Jihu threw a bomb inside the building. After the explosion, everyone was dirty with expired milk. Accordingly, they were petrified and could not move. Qijiao was at a loss. While Hu absolutely calmly flew into the room on a bike and took the elixirs, declaring that it belonged to him. He had an electric glove that could use magical energy, which made the task easier. After which the main character released the python from the vessel so that it would interfere with the Taoists. It was as if the guy ordered the snake to hurry up so that he would not be caught by the people from the Federation. At that moment, the enraged Qijiao destroyed the stone shell and rushed towards the young man. The master spewed out a huge amount of flame that engulfed the entire building, who joked that he had simply delivered the package. It is worth noting that Ji's invention in the form of a milk bomb turned out to be quite effective in practice. The embittered head could not accept defeat and followed the insolent man. He literally summoned a meteorite that burned and destroyed all living things, but Jihu managed to dodge. Using their blades as air transport, the Taoists continued to pursue the guy. The immortal cultivator tried in every possible way to stop the young man, shouting threats at him. The main character, in turn, rushed forward, scattering the warriors on the way with his motorcycle. Meanwhile, only 10% remained until the bike transformation was fully loaded. Hu threw a mouse at the cultivator catching up with him, which subsequently tied him hand and foot Qijiao. However, the head easily broke the cord. Ji noticed that it was a gift from his ex-girlfriend. The angry master said threateningly that with such low-level tricks, he could not escape. After which he began to use flame magic. The guy, in turn, used a keyboard with damage-dealing buttons. But Qijiao burned them to the ground using a fiery fist, which was another dangerous skill of the head. At this moment, the loading of the transformation came to an end, and the motorcycle shattered into small parts. Self-confident Jihu asked the master if he had ever seen a dodge but lax. The stunned immortal cultivator did not understand what was happening and what to expect from the young man. After a couple of seconds, the parts of the motorcycle began to rapidly come together, after which they were finally transformed into an incredibly powerful and beautiful motorcycle. Ji noted that such a bike costs a fortune and is the fastest machine in the world. Qijiao instantly burst into flames, demonstrating his transformation. Having turned into a dragon, the head confidently declared that he would tear the boy into pieces. Hu, in turn, turned the motorcycle around and ran over the immortal, thereby throwing him to the side. The cultivator tried to attack him, but Jihu was already several tens of meters away. The rest came to the head's aid. Qijiao noted the guy's speed, because even the celestial unicorns were not so fast. Holding a mouse in her hands, the girl came to the conclusion that this item needed to be studied, since it was an amazing weapon. The master from the eastern branch was spitting blood from excessive rage at this time. The immortal then turned into a meteorite to catch up with the protagonist. Qijiao demanded Hu to stop, but the daredevil had a different opinion on this matter. Ji released puffs of smoke from the chimney, thereby delaying the ferocious cultivator, and he himself flew into the heights. The head accused him of cowardice, because the impudent man constantly runs away and does not accept a fair fight. Suddenly, Jihu disappeared, turning into thunder, after which he appeared next to the girl and snatched the mouse from her. Despite the fact that he broke up with his ex-girlfriend, this item was very dear to him. The enraged cultivator asked his assistant if she knew where this impudent man came from. The Taoist replied that this guy called the bull his brother, and she only saw him once. Qijiao ordered everyone to immediately start searching for this bull and his accomplice along the entire east coast. Meanwhile, the Demon King was sitting on his throne. Suddenly it became very cold. he realized that someone was not speaking favorably about him. Thanks to his updated and extremely fast motorcycle for its generation, Jihu was able to avoid a collision with the master. On December 5th, warriors gathered at Dongming Mountain to defend their land. A large army, along with the spirits, were awaiting the arrival of the bull. There was only one goal: to put an end to this war. Qi, in turn, accused the boar of sending Ji to certain death. After all, 3 days had already passed, and who had not returned. The spider thought that he had died. The boar, in his defense, said that he did not want this, and besides, it is not known for sure whether Shurji killed him or not. At that moment, Jir picked up the coffin with a web and dragged it along with her. The demon asked what she was going to do. The girl replied that she intended to go to the White Bone Mountain in search of a guy, stating that if he was truly dead, then she would never marry, as a sign of her eternal gratitude to Hu. All the animals began to dissuade her, because the bull could appear with his army at any moment. However, she made her final decision. If she had known how everything would turn out, she would have acted differently. At this time, the main character landed next to them, literally making a crater in the ground. The young man understood that if he had not slowed down, he would already be dead. The updated bike was indeed very fast. Jihu noticed that his device had turned back into a scooter. The young man assumed that this was due to energy consumption, but with the help of magic stones the situation could be corrected. Having risen, he saw the perplexed faces of the demons and asked why they were looking at him like that. The embittered Jir asked him where he had been all this time, because 3 days had already passed. Hu immediately released a python with glowing eyes, which began to hiss at everyone. The guy calmed him down and urged him to find another place for cultivation. He also asked him not to return to Amei Peak. The snake, in turn, flew up into the heights and rushed in an unknown direction. The young man waved his hand. The spider again pestered him with her questions about where he was. Jihu replied that it was a very long story, after which the elixirs appeared in his hand. Ji asked what they should do with them. Having poured them onto the ground, the drugs for some unknown reason flew up and rushed to the heavens. Chi managed to catch them with her web and dragged them down, but they did not give in. Ji asked the demons to cut some rather unusual elixirs. Since their ki is incredibly strong and it will not be able to hold them back for long, the animals looked at each other and took out their blades. Suddenly, the potions burst out of the web, who immediately threw his kitchen knives at them. A moment later, the magic potions formed a kind of whirlwind. Chi asked the young man what kind of weapon he used. Having looked at them closer, the spider was perplexed and could not believe that these were ordinary kitchen knives. The surprised girl turned to the main character and asked if he really used kitchen utensils. The boar noticed that some words were written on them. Everyone immediately tried to make out the inscriptions. Each knife had one word engraved on it, saying that Jihu is a very good guy, who stated that it was originally a gift from his ex-girlfriend as she worked as a chef. All the demons began to laugh and make fun of him in every possible way. Ji was extremely indignant at their behavior. Even Chi began to mock the young traveler, because in every battle everyone would pay attention to this. Then, as a consolation, she said that even if he is not very good with girls, he is clearly better than a bull. At this moment, thunder suddenly roared, and the monster king appeared in front of the demons. Jir ordered her warriors to immediately take out their weapons and prepare for battle. It is worth recognizing that although Hu's knives were kitchen knives, they were also extremely dangerous. Ji armed himself with his miraculous knives and rice cooker, and the others also drew their swords and axes. The guy said that if the battle was lost, he would save Chi and they would run away together. Jir blushed and rather hesitantly replied that no one would want to run away with him. Meanwhile, the clouds were gathering, and absolutely the entire army of the Demon King arrived. Suddenly everything burst into flames. Qijiao also arrived in time with his warriors. He wanted to kill the bull, because the monster was trying to take his wife. In response, the horned beast said that he didn't even know him, but just wanted to talk to the girl and didn't know about her marriage. But the girl used her manipulation on the immortal so that he would immediately take revenge on this demon for her. Naturally, the cultivator listened to his tear-stained wife and began to burn everything to the ground. The bull, in turn, again turned into a huge cow and rushed to attack Qijiao. Thus, the two armies began to fight among themselves, completely forgetting about the guy and Qi. The spider did not understand why they were fighting each other, who asked her to just watch what was happening. Ji began handing out food to everyone, urging them in every possible way not to interfere and enjoy the performance. Suddenly Ji called out to her warriors to follow her into the cave. This was a completely different lair of Qi, which no one knew about. The curious Jihu asked where this cave came from. The girl replied that she had been digging it for many years, adding that she had long wanted to make a secret passage and even installed magic stones. After which the spider opened a portal, and they watched the confrontation between Qijiao and the bull as if through the earth. The ideal scenario would be for both cultivators to take maximum damage to easily defeat them. The boar offered to attack them, because they had already used a large amount of energy, and besides, who had magic knives. Ji believed that the elixirs were integrated into the knives and they became stronger, but he did not know how to use them most effectively. Qi said he needed to concentrate and put his hands on them. Exactly where it is written that he is a good person. Ji began to laugh. The guy asked her not to remind her of this. The main character did exactly as the spider said. Suddenly the knives began to glow with some kind of magic. Jihu realized that it worked and he would feel the effect directly in the battle. Meanwhile, Qijiao began to win the fight with the bull, which hastened to escape. Naturally, the enraged immortal cultivator did not give him such an opportunity. The head of the eastern branch continued to shoot flaming spheres at the wounded cow. At a certain moment, Qijiao again reincarnated into a huge and long dragon, after which he dealt a crushing and extremely painful blow to the demon king. As a result, the bull flew into a rock next to the entrance to the cave where the animals with Qi were hiding. At this time, Jihu picked up speed on his scooter and called for them to open the entrance. The young man intended to use his rice cooker against the bull. Having approached him, who threw a furnace into the air, which sucked the exhausted monster lord into itself. During the flight, the rice cooker changed its appearance, which prompted the guy to think that his bike worked on the same principle. Subsequently, Qijiao and his wife flew up to Ji. The main character pretended to pass by. However, the immortal cultivator recognized him and said that he was lucky today, because he met another brat. Jihu instantly turned the scooter around and rushed forward, followed by the irrepressible girl releasing a magical cloud of flame. Without thinking twice, who threw a rice cooker at her and tried to escape. The mobile oven, in turn, sucked in the wife of the immortal. The girl only managed to scream. The distraught cultivator did not understand how this could happen. After which the rice cooker blinded Qijiao with the rays emanating from it and returned to its owner. The head of the eastern branch was furious and rushed after Ji, who was driving away from him into the distance. Taking back his human form, the immortal released a fireball towards the guy, which landed next to the scooter, leaving behind a crater in the ground. At that moment, his scooter transformed into a dodge but lax and the young man flew into the air. The embittered Qijiao followed him again, throwing fire spheres at him, who called out to the master and showed him the rice cooker. The naive cultivator said that it would not work against him. Ji threw the stove at him as a distraction, then released his magical knives, which in turn caused considerable damage to the head of the eastern district. Qijiao wanted to use the sun amulet, but it was chopped into small pieces. Qi and the other demons noticed that if he used it, Jihu would have a hard time. The cultivator called on the guy to stop. In response, the young man only stepped on the gas. A moment later, he circled around and found himself behind the immortal master, after which they again used miraculous kitchen knives, which they used to cut up Qijiao's body. Then the main character rushed away from the fierce immortal master. The demons noted the guy's extremely successful tactics, because he could deal damage covertly and used acceleration. Feeling an advantage, the young man again unleashed a series of attacks on the sluggish cultivator. And again he hurried to hide. Jihu seemed to mock the head of the eastern branch. The distraught Qijiao began to shoot fire around himself, not paying attention to where the fiery clouds were flying. Subsequently, one of the fire spheres landed directly in the spider's cave. The animals began to leave the lair in panic, and Qi, in turn, tried to calm them down. However, the rock began to collapse and gradually blocked the passage with stones. Jir also had to escape. Suddenly, the cultivator made a rather insidious decision and flew towards the spider, intending to kill her. Then Qi turned into a six-eyed silver spider. Everyone was shocked and did not know the girl's ability. The immortal master noticed that she was that same ancient demon who had mutated into a silver spider. Jir herself didn't like her transformation, but she had no choice. Jihu took advantage of the moment while Chijiao was distracted by Chi's transformation and attacked him. The spider accused the head of the Eastern District of forcing her to turn into an 8-legged monster, after which Ji began to shower the immortal with her web. The boar, meanwhile, called on everyone to take up arms and immediately attack the master. Having wrapped him from head to toe in a web, the demon began to beat him. Chijiao said that this was not enough. Then it exploded and scattered the animals to the sides. The head literally burst into flames. The spider tirelessly wrapped him in webs, but it didn't work very well against the flames. The girl urged Ji to hurry up, since she would not be able to hold him back for long, who replied that he needed a little time. The guy carried out some kind of synthesis of his knives so that the result was a complete blade. Chijiao drew attention to the young man who was using unusual magic, at which time Chi again tried to tie him up. However, the cultivator constantly got unraveled. Then the sisters came to Ji's aid and together they released the web. The girl again hurried the main character, because her energy was running out. Jihu used magic stones and the result was a full-fledged blade. It was a huge resemblance to a kitchen cleaver, all with the same engraving that the heavens literally thundered about. His name forever left a mark on history. Countless demons heard about him. In a fiery cloudy cave in the eastern land, one immortal ordered his servants to find out more about Jihu. The same situation happened in the Yellow Storm Demon's lair, where the cultivator demanded that the minions find out about this guy. Even on the lush mountain, the Cloud Dew sisters started talking about the young traveler. Meanwhile, the main character hurried to help Chi and attacked the persistent Chijiao. The head of the Eastern District literally began to beg for mercy and closed his eyes in fear. However, nothing happened. Ji could not understand what went wrong. The ferocious cultivator in turn hurried to strike Hu with a fiery blow, but the demons came to his defense, and quite promptly repulsed the immortal master. Ji suddenly said that they shouldn't strain themselves so much, because he has everything under control. It is worth noting that the blue blade formed from 5 knives could increase in size and was indestructible. Breaking into a malicious smile, Jihu asked Chijiao if everything was fine with him. The master could not understand what he was driving at. The young man noticed that the power of the sword would not harm him from the outside, but from the inside it would destroy his soul. And if the cultivator moves, it will explode. The immortal was at a loss. Just as he wanted to take a step, the guy again reminded him that he would be torn into small pieces if he stepped forward. The spider herself did not fully believe this, suggesting that Hu was trying to deceive him. Ji added that the master may not believe and take a step, but the consequences will be irreversible. Chijiao menacingly declared that he was not afraid of anything or anyone. Jihu provoked him in every possible way so that the master would still dare to check this. At this moment, the head of the eastern branch began to shake, and the young man began to egg him on again. The immortal began to doubt the veracity of the guy's words, but if he did not deceive, then the task became more complicated. Chi also decided to do her bit by starting to provoke the cultivator in every possible way. Suddenly, Chijiao said that he would not budge, and they still could not do anything to him. At this time, a familiar female voice suddenly sounded. Shurji asked if the master wanted to play a game. All the demons stared at the white bone mountain lady who was playing on the laptop. The girl had just managed to complete the last level in the video game, which made her in a good mood. Shur looked at Ji and said that she would like to borrow his laptop. The main character answered positively, because he still uses a computer, so he agreed without any problems. After which the beauty said that she was ready to help him in this situation. Chijiao, in turn, realized that he was finished and if he had known how everything would turn out, he would not have attacked the guy at all. At the same moment, the notorious bull arrived at the party and called on everyone to remain in their places. But when he saw a pretty girl, he stuck to her like a leaf, starting to praise himself and try to marry her. Jihu suddenly intervened and called out to him. The Demon King stated that he would deal with him later. After which he continued to compliment Shurji, but the girl did not fall for his extremely primitive tricks. Bull asked if they had met before. Shur replied that she had known him for a long time. The excited monster said that this was a fateful meeting. The beauty suddenly became electrified. And a moment later, the bull was pierced by lightning. A satisfied Chi led the sisters back to the cave. The next day, everyone continued to drink alcohol and have fun, dancing under Ji's house. Which they eventually woke up, hearing noise on the street. The guy looked out the window. Who saw most of the demons celebrating their victory and singing songs. having quite a fun time. The bull, in turn, began to serve Lady Shurji and brought her cookies while she played on her laptop. Jihu was surprised that she stayed out all night with the others and didn't even take her medicine. At that moment, Shur flew up on her bed to the young man's window and said that she felt much better, adding that video games helped her and she improved it with magic stones and now it is golden in color. The main character agreed to give her a laptop and asked if it was all because of him. At this time, the lady became worse and she said that the disease began to return. Ji immediately gave her medicine to drink, saying that she should not neglect them so that such situations would not occur. After which Shurji felt better, and she asked if he wanted to rule Dongming Mountain. Who could not believe that the mistress had actually offered him such a responsible position? Shur began to tell that she was ordered by Babel from their federation to rule the demon clan of the eastern land. But over time, her condition worsened, especially since the king of the monsters is too stupid and cannot control anything. In this regard, it is necessary to find another leader, and he is an ideal candidate. Besides, the guy played good video games. Jihu stated that playing games and controlling demons are completely different things and has nothing to do with leadership. The young man suggested putting Chi in this place, but Shurji said that she was not suitable for this, adding that none of the monsters present, not even the boar, are suitable for this except him, which he categorically disagreed with and replied that he was a little worse than this guy, but much smarter. Shur took out the seal on Dongming Mountain and encouraged those who wished to try their luck if they truly consider themselves worthy. The boar decided to become a pioneer and asked her how exactly to do this. Shurji replied that they need to write what they want and put a seal, whose wish is fulfilled, he will become the ruler of the mountain. The demons finally saw the divine seal, but were rather skeptical about this idea. The main character smiled and noted that she couldn't fool him. Then, when they opened the box, they found a radish underneath and were surprised. Ji remembered how he personally put seals on the ground, and he was visited by déjà vu. Shur noted the significance of the magical seal that contained the souls of animals from Dongming Mountain. The boar, in turn, volunteered to be the first to test the seal, naively believing that he would become the new head. The demon wrote that he did not need to give gifts in the form of cars and houses for the wedding, then he put a stamp. However, unfortunately for the boar, nothing happened. He decided to wait some more time, after which he smiled at the lady and suggested that she wait just a couple of days to be sure. At that moment, the snake pushed him away and declared that he felt some kind of connection with the mountain and therefore would also try his luck. After him, the spider also took part, writing that beauty should include the color red. Shurji noticed that they were clearly not to the liking of Mount Dongming, and were not suitable for the role of ruler. The boar was extremely outraged by this formulation, because he lived on this mountain for hundreds of years. The dissatisfied demon invited the young traveler to try next. Who didn't know what order to write, she decided to give a hint and asked him to mention discounts on cosmetics. But the guy prescribed that if there are more than 2 children in a family, then they are honored to become famous throughout the continent. As soon as the young man put the divine seal on a piece of paper, the order shone blue and soared into the heights. After which the letter was burned by flames and scattered in the sky. All the animals were shocked. From that moment on, the animals were filled with love and went home. Jihu realized that they wanted to conceive another child, so the order was given by the mountain. The indignant boar again began to freak out, saying that his order did not work, and the mountain accepted some young man as its own. Shurji happily declared him the ruler of Dongming, assuming that his home was somehow connected to the mountain. The demon asked if he would collect taxes from everyone or do something similar. Hu replied that he had not thought about anything like that. Shur, in turn, reminded him of his duties and great responsibility. The Lady of the White Bone said that management concerns are not so simple and he is obliged to take care of his well-being. And if someone wants to take power away from him, Jihu must kill him, and it is necessary to train demons. The young man confidently stated that he would do everything possible to keep Dongmin safe. Suddenly, a smiling Shurji threw a seal at him. Ji almost dropped it. A strong wind rose, the trees in the forest seemed to bow to the new ruler of the mountain. The spirit of the mountain, through a seal, suddenly began to merge with the main character's house. Then he was drawn in by an unknown magical force emanating from the rice cooker. The mobile alchemical furnace, in turn, changed its color and overall appearance. Ji assumed that this was his bonus as a newly minted ruler. Shi added that there is also paid leave, and if he becomes a successful leader for 500 years, he will have a cave, after which Lady Shiji hurried to return to her mountain of white bone, where a new level in the game awaited her. Along with her, the ruler took an immortal cultivator from the eastern lands and a bull. At this moment, all the demons of the mountain greeted the new king of Dongming Mountain and bowed deeply to him. The animals very convincingly asked Jihu to take care of them as if they were their own children. The boar called on the new ruler to put a seal under the order, where the demon asked not to give him gifts for the wedding. The serpent also decided to use the services of the leader, asking him to drive the hare out of the cave so that he could settle there. But Qi immediately drove them away and said that no one would dare manipulate the ruler. Since this role is meant for her, Jia immediately started asking him for a discount at the powder store. The main character hurried home. The indignant spider called on him to stop, because she had not voiced all her demands. Time flew by too quickly, and our just ruler successfully coped with his new responsibilities. More than 2 months have passed since that very battle, and a beautiful spring has arrived on Dongming Mountain. Friendliness and fun flourished everywhere. Everyone forgot about hardships and sadness. Life on the mountain really became better. Unlike the constantly working Jihu, who dreamed of relaxation and was mostly busy with paperwork. The only income came from the sale of elixirs, but this was not enough. The rice cooker did not receive new functions, therefore the production of those same potions did not improve. Ji was tired and decided to take a break at least a little. Rocking in his chair, he realized that this work was too exhausting. It was necessary to find a way to get more money, but how to do this remained a mystery. At that moment, an upset spider approached him. The young man asked what had happened. Qi said sadly that she had gained a lot of weight, but he didn't even pay attention to it. Who had too much work to do and he didn't see the problem that she had gained a little weight, which is something you can't say to girls. Ji bared her belly and said that she had gained half an inch and it was just terrible. Ji began to joke, saying that because of this there would be no flood or volcanic eruption. The young man began to touch her stomach and did not find any special changes. At this time Qi realized how it looked from the outside and stepped back. The girl accused Jihu of being overweight because he has been making too many cream pies lately, after which she demanded that he help her lose weight, who had no choice but to agree. The main character suggested that she go to Mount Shushan, where they would chase her to kill her and then she would quickly lose weight. After some time, thunder suddenly roared. Ji and Ji saw a large thundercloud approaching them through the window. As it turned out, an unknown Taoist dared to come to their land and say that no one could stop him. The demons were outraged by his presence and urged him not to create problems on foreign territory. However, the cultivator continued to escalate the situation and provoke the demons. At that moment, the spider intervened and said that no one was afraid of him and he would be in trouble if he dared to harm them. The Taoist fixed his gaze on the girl and fell silent abruptly. The monsters did not understand what had happened. Suddenly the stranger started bleeding from his nose, which is what the boar told him about. The guy hastened to wipe it from his face. Then he called on the demonic beauty not to try to seduce him. In response, Qi stated that she has not been doing this since she met Jihu. However, the Taoist noticed that she had fooled him last time and no longer believed her words. Surprised, Jia asked him if they knew each other. The cultivator urged her not to pretend. The young man told how one day she pretended to be weak. He felt sorry for her and he gave her magic stones that he had been saving for years. Qi was lost in the thought process for a while, but could not remember it. The cultivator was doubly offended that she really didn't remember him, or was pretending again. At that moment, her sisters approached her and reminded her of the Taoist, to whom she showed the way to the demons. Unexpectedly, Jia still remembered him and called him Huang Yan. The guy replied that his name was Qi Shi Yan. The main character began to remember such a spirit in Chinese history and did not understand what he needed from her. He could only guess why Yang was so desperate. Perhaps he had even learned the legendary sword art. At this time, Qi Shi turned to Ji and asked what the man had forgotten among these demons. But Qi immediately came to the defense of her and told him not to touch him, and if he couldn't wait to fight, then she was ready. Yang was outraged by the wording where she called the guy her friend. Jihu noted that this was not what he could have thought of. But the mechanism had already been launched and the Taoist was flying at all speeds to kill him. However, at that moment a snake arrived to help and dealt a powerful blow to Chixie's back with a mace. The monster said that he was too weak and did not dare to attack their leader, much less stare at Ji-er. As a result, a fight broke out between them, who, meanwhile, hurried to go into the house. But Yang used thunder magic and immediately pierced all the animals with lightning. Ji turned around. After which, the cultivator hurried to attack the head of Dongming Mountain and the spider. Ji-hu, in turn, managed to push Chi away. The master said that this time he would leave her alone, but she should think about her actions. All the demons instantly rushed to the girl, wondering if she was okay, then noticed that Hu had disappeared. As it turned out, Chixi took the young man with him. The guy said that he should not involve him in his affairs. However, Yang said that he was not obliged to stay close to that insidious woman, otherwise she would squeeze all the juice out of him, confidently adding that a real man should not be seduced. The main character asked why, in this case, he had the powder hidden, because he probably wanted to give it to Chi. But the cultivator replied that he found this item on the road and did not intend to give it to Ji-er. Ji-hu understood that he was at a disadvantage, since he did not even take knives with him, and magical clothes would not save him. Suddenly, Yang ran out of energy and the sword they were flying on gradually began to stop. Chi noticed that his secret power is not stable and he can only use it once a month, and only for 15 minutes. After some time, they arrived at a certain settlement resembling a market. The master said that he would soon send him to the city. Walking through the bazaar, Ji noted a huge number of spirits and demons. At that moment, they were accosted by a stranger who announced 30% discounts in her store. After Ian made new friends, he said that it was necessary to conduct reconnaissance before they left this place. Going into the tavern and sitting down at the table, Chi ordered cheaper food, who noticed that he could pay for dinner. The master began to talk about how he gave Chi a chance to improve, since she was raising 6 sisters, but instead Ji-er gathered demons. Ji decided to ask the Taoist how much he was paid to come to the mountain for the monsters. Surprised, Ian asked how he knew about this. The young man replied that no one would do this without a reason. The protagonist urged the cultivator to be honest and say who actually hired him. Chi said that one day a man came to his door and called himself a Taoist from the Two-Headed Snake Federation. Ji-hu realized that the plan to exterminate the demons from Dongming Mountain belonged to the head of the Eastern District with that girl. And since their federation was defeated by Lady Shurji, they hired a spy to eventually create a branch in their land. Who asked Yang if he was going to continue killing monsters on Dongming Mountain. The master stated that he always fights for justice and nothing will stop him, but first he needs to send Ji to the city of mortals. At that moment, the waiter approached them and presented a bill amounting to 1,500 magic stones. Chixi was extremely indignant. The young man replied that everything was cheap except for the shrimp soup from the Green Island, since the dish was filled with magical energy. Who immediately calculated that one shrimp costs about 30 stones, this gave him an idea. While the cultivator continued to be sarcastic to the waiter, refusing to pay the bills. The absolutely calm guy repeated his demand, but Ian stood his ground. At that moment unknown people suddenly burst into the stern. The people were armed with swords and said that the Taoist had no right to create trouble in the Black Mountain Market. One of them said again that they would not leave here alive until they paid for the food. Chi, in turn, did not stand on ceremony with the bandits and attacked them first, using his thunder abilities. The main character called on him to stop fighting, because there was a whole army behind them. At this time, a huge stone golem, which was located near the market, woke up. The rock guard ordered the warriors to immediately catch the scoundrels and make them regret what they had done. Yang and Ji-hu immediately jumped onto the sword and rushed into the distance, but the warriors did the same and followed them. Using the endless blade technique, the cultivator easily dealt with the Black Mountain bandits. Suddenly the golem called on boundless power, some higher power, Hu and Chi did not understand what he was doing. After which a large stone hand rushed towards them. Ji took off his t-shirt and threw it over his palm. As a result, the hand fell apart into many stones, and the Taoist and Ji-hu hurried to hide. Yang was surprised that the guy was not an ordinary person and could use magical objects. The main character asked him to speed up because he was terribly cold. Meanwhile, the golem again called for help from an unknown force, and another palm appeared in front of them. This time, Hu had to sacrifice his pants, which he also threw over his hand and destroyed it. However, this was not enough. as the stone guard followed them again. Chi volunteered to help and rushed into battle with the rocky palm, actively using his skills. However, he was much less lucky, his hand simply hit him against a rock. The magical monster itself called on the warriors to kill another cultivator. Meanwhile, Jihu landed on the top of the mountain, freezing from the wild cold. Unexpectedly, a rice cooker came to the rescue and signaled the owner of its arrival. The stove said that he was detained by a fox who likes to change clothes outside the cave. The warriors were perplexed and assumed that this creature was a demon. The rice cooker identified itself as Pot and stated that it came from Dongming Mountain and was the master's magic item. Ji joyfully shouted that this was his alchemical mobile furnace in which he brewed elixirs. Pot said that he had gained reason and was glad to serve him, after which he presented Hu with a fox belt. The surprised guide did not understand why he needed a belly belt. The rice cooker convinced him that she could handle everything herself. At that moment, the furnace turned to the bandits and called on them to surrender, but they flatly refused to do so. One of them said that he was just a magical object and could not cope with them, after which he hurried to attack Pot with the help of the sun amulet, which spewed out spheres of fire, but the rice cooker was not so simple. The magical furnace defiantly absorbed all the flames. The warriors were shocked by such skills. Pot noticed that it was too simple for him, thereby provoking the cultivators. The bandits immediately fired their fiery blades at him, but this attempt was unsuccessful, since the rather dexterous magical object easily evaded all attacks. The rice cooker said that they should give up, because otherwise they would die. However, the blades were still able to cut the fox's belt located on the stove. This infuriated him. Pot looked at the soldiers menacingly. They realized that nothing good would happen now. The magical object said that in addition to the attempt on its owner, they also ruined his souvenir. It is worth recognizing that this tool for preparing elixirs really carried a huge danger for any master. A moment later, sweat engulfed everything in flames. The thugs were shocked that he could use the fire he had absorbed. The end result was that most of them were burnt by the rice cooker. Jihu understood that he really could only watch what was happening. After the furnace destroyed everyone, he began to mourn the fox's belt being cut into small pieces. Hu noted that sometimes it is necessary to give up the old in order to gain the new. Pot replied that Dongming Mountain is indeed full of sorceresses, like the flower spirit. At this moment, the same irrepressible stone golem suddenly appeared in front of them. The naive guard called on the young cultivator to surrender, noting the cowardice of his charges. Ji tried to stall for time and asked the rice cooker to give him magic knives, but the oven gave out plasticine. The main character repeated that he needed knives. Sweat immediately released the kitchen utensils, spinning around the owner, then they turned into a huge cleaver. Golem read on it about the good Jihu and realized that this was the same guy who was abandoned by the girl. The rice cooker, in turn, asked the gentleman to leave this demon to him. Pot asked if he had the appropriate documents confirming his legal residence on Black Mountain. The stone brute replied that the entire Black Mountain belonged to his master. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the forest, declaring that not all the territory belonged to this scoundrel. The golem did not understand what was happening and who was talking to him. He fearfully looked towards the dense forest. Seeing the plants approaching him, the worried guard began to run away, trying to hide. However, the long and fast vines still caught up with the extremely slow stone brute. As a result, they tied him up, but the golem managed to consume the pill. And a moment later, more arms grew, and the guard subsequently disentangled himself from numerous plants. After which he rushed towards the main character, saying that he must die. But at that moment it was as if stars began to fall from the sky, which attracted attention. A second later, a rather creepy girl came out of the forest. There was blood on her face, and she herself was covered with a black robe. Jihu noticed that she looked quite powerful. The magic golem literally trembled with fear, after which it hurried to hide. Suddenly the girl waved her hand and ghosts flew out of the forest and followed the guard. As a result, the spirits easily caught up with him and began to inflict extremely painful blows. Everything happened quite quickly. The demon turned into a pile of stones in seconds. Then the stranger said that everyone who came to Lanrua Temple would be destroyed. Hu realized that it was actually Sheqian competing with the spider. And in the temple there live 3 witches and she is one of them. At that moment the girl turned sharply to him. Immediately dozens of ghosts appeared behind her. Ji understood that he had fallen into a trap. The main character called on the rice cooker to give him knives and apply a defensive formation. However, the self-confident Pot said that he would personally deal with this scum, but as soon as the stove approached them, the witches instantly found themselves next to the guy. Xiaqian, in turn, began to slowly wipe the blood from her face, after which she also defiantly took off her black robe, turning into a rather pretty girl. The rest of the ghosts followed her transformation and took on human form. Who asked if they were the legendary sorceresses from Japan. She looked at him in surprise and asked what Japan is. Seeing the young man's magical knives, the girl immediately began to persuade him to visit their store. Saying that they had a magical staff made from a branch of a 1,000-year-old tree, Jihu replied that he would not give up his knives. Then the cunning witch began to offer him magic pears that increased strength and life expectancy. The sisters assumed that the guy was cold. He replied that he had medicine for the cold and did not need anything. Ji tried to leave them, but the irrepressible girls continued to offer him various goods. The lady also tried to interest the young man using a secret technique, where in addition he would be provided with a ghost girl, who realized that they were only pursuing profit, and he felt sorry for those who wanted to marry Xiaqian. Ji thanked her for her help and extremely politely refused her services, after which he bowed to her and said that he had once heard about her. The girl immediately straightened her hair and called herself Lu Mu, the forest witch. The young mangaka knew that in the future she would become an old demon of the forest, even though she didn't look like it at all. Who decided to ask her which of them was Xiaqian, but the witch did not understand what he was talking about. Jihu was shocked, because Lanrua Temple couldn't have been called that if it weren't for Xiaqian. Suddenly the guy sneezed and shivered from the cold. The witch realized that the young man was cold. In this connection, she offered him her medicine, which she personally made, but the main character refused and said that he could use a warm place and a little nap. Lu invited him to go to Lanrua Temple, where he would be fed, watered and put to bed, especially since the building had recently been renovated. After some time, they approached the entrance to the temple, which had by no means a renewed appearance, which Hu noticed. Mu stated that it was 300 years ago, and for demons such a period of time is nothing. Once inside the temple, Jihu began to look around and was horrified. Because the windows didn't close, some tables and chairs had no legs, and there was also a hole in the roof. Ji thought that everything on Dongming Mountain was in a deplorable state, but Lanrua Temple in this sense broke all records. While Lu's power was at a mortal level, and how they came to this was unknown, because you could just steal something. Then Mu led him to the room where Hu could spend the night, asking what else he needed. Jihu said that he didn't need anything. He himself thought about how polite she was and even prepared clothes for him. At this moment, the girl again began trying to sell him the calming sticks that she had made herself. The main character instantly moved to his bed and closed the door behind him, right in front of the annoying lady's nose. The ghost girl asked her why. She said that she made these sticks herself, because they picked them up on the road. Meanwhile, the guy was getting comfortable in the room and was about to go to bed. Jihu asked Pot not to steal anyone's belts when he fell asleep. The stove promised not to do this. He added that if he did this, he would be locked up as punishment, but he had a hard time believing it. Naturally, when the young man fell asleep, the magical pet jumped out the window in search of something interesting. And since he wanted to become an international thief, this time it was not the belt he stole. Waking up, Ji was absolutely alive and well, because he thought that the witches could steal things from him or even kill him. Pot immediately reported how he slept and did not steal anyone's belts, who suggested that he still stole, but a different item. Opening the door, Jihu saw Lu, who stated that a thief had snuck in at night. Naturally, the young man understood everything. The main character told her that today he intends to leave them and return home. The upset witch replied that they would see each other soon and said goodbye to the guy. Walking past the premises, Ji noticed a huge number of different objects in them. Where there were a lot of talismans and herbs and elixirs, it was no wonder that Lu wanted to sell him a couple of items. At this moment, the ghost girl said that when the bull fought with the spider, they wanted to sell everything in the eastern lands. But the battle ended too quickly and no one needed these things. Li noted that absolutely everyone alive makes mistakes and this is normal, so there is nothing to worry about. However, the girl said that this happens every year. They buy a bunch of things no one needs. The main character realized why their business was not thriving and ended up at the bottom. Ji asked why they needed so many magic stones, and as soon as Mu began to answer the question, a miracle happened. At this moment, several cultivators who were heading to the Black Mountain Market flew over them. Lu urged everyone to immediately do business and lure visitors, who noticed that her trading business was not going very well, or rather, not making any progress at all. Of the 10 people, only 3 stopped, but it later turned out that they were asking for directions. However, one of them still declared that he wanted to get everything. The girl instantly brought him purple grass. As it turned out, the guy didn't mean goods at all, but slightly different services, for which he received it in full. The witch did not hesitate to hit him in the face. Jihu, in turn, asked the rice cooker to give him 100 magic stones, after which I paid for the overnight stay and the service included, with a pretty good tip. Satisfied, Lu said that she would always wait for his return, because he was welcome here. Suddenly Ji returned, and a surprised Mu greeted the young traveler. The young man offered to help her sell all these items and maybe even earn a little extra money. The main character whispered something in her ear. Lu doubted that it would work, but Hu said that in any case it was necessary to try and agreed to stay with them longer, after which he called the other witches to him and explained what needed to be done. After waiting until the cultivators flew past them again, the guy signaled to the girls. They, in turn, began shouting that they had huge discounts and they couldn't find cheaper goods. Surprisingly, it worked and a crowd of people were already buying herbs, while the sick who was drinking tea, wrapped in a blanket. Lu and the girls were selling all their goods for 5 stones apiece, and a whole line of craftsmen lined up at their counter. After which the joyful Mu returned to her savior and thanked him for the advice, but saw him in a deplorable state. She offered him free medicine, but Hu refused, saying there was nothing wrong with him, adding that in general he has a lot of ideas on how to promote their business, for example, organizing a lottery. Lu asked to talk more about this, but the young man suddenly fell asleep in the middle of the conversation. The witch covered him with another blanket and called on her friends to be quieter. Mu understood that she should thank him when he woke up and ask him how to do business correctly. A moment later, Ji woke up and saw a spider with an entire army of demons. Lu and Chi instantly entered into battle with each other. The stunned guy asked why they were fighting. The main character called on the boar not to stand aside. The beast was surprised when he saw his leader. He rushed to hug him, saying that everyone thought he was finished, and Ji couldn't find a place for herself at all. The girls, meanwhile, continued to fight and express personal hostility towards each other in every possible way. Hu urged them to stop immediately, but the boar noticed that they always fight as soon as they see each other. Ji asked to tell him in more detail what such a terrible thing happened between them. The demon replied that when she wanted to fool another man, Lu stole him from her, and since then they have been at enmity. The guy could not understand how Ji could lose, because she is the first beauty in the eastern region. At this point, Reddy urged Jihu to go home immediately, but Mu intervened again. The witch asked where they were going. Chi replied that their home was on Dongming Mountain. Then Lu asked the spider to borrow the young man for a while. Ji almost fell when she heard this. After which Mu ran up to him and thanked him for his good idea, with which she earned more than 500 magic stones. And now they have money for new goods. The young man advised her not to spend money on the next batch, but she was sure of the opposite. Then the smiling witch invited him to join Lanrua Temple, which was quite predictable, adding that she will pay him generously for various business ideas, and if he teaches her how to run a business, he will earn even more. However, an angry Chi said that Ji was one of them and would never join the dirty business. Then Lu offered Hu a monthly salary of 500 magic stones. Reddy replied that they could offer him the same profit and even better. Mu, in turn, spoke about 600 stones. Ji raised it to 700. The spider set the bar at 1,000 stones, and Lu immediately fell silent, realizing that she did not have that kind of money. But the witch said that she would give him 800 stones and, in addition, one beautiful ghostly maiden. The girl burst into tears and asked why Mu was selling her, because she did everything right. Lu smiled and said that this was not a sale. Pointing to the young man, the girl added that he was quite a nice guy, and also rich. The ghostly lady approached Jihu and bowed low to him, saying that she agreed to be his slave. Mu said that if this is not enough, then they have other girls who are just as beautiful. Ahead of events, the boar noticed that he and Kiwa loved each other and did not intend to part. Chi said that Ji is actually the ruler of Dongming Mountain and cannot accept her proposals. However, Lu continued to talk about how there were very nice girls about them. Reddy noted that Hu reads stories to her sisters every night and is very close to them. But Mu seemed to be deliberately repeating the same thing, that they have beautiful girls. Ji menacingly declared that the guy is like a brother to all of them, but she apparently doesn't understand this. After much arguing, Chi abruptly turned to Ji-Hu and urged him to choose one of them. Each tried to win him over to their side. Hu could not even imagine that he was so popular among women. Suddenly the ground began to shake. The worried spider began to look around. Lu said that this is just a gate to the afterlife. The demons were shocked. Mu added that Judge Wang visits them every couple of months. Hu knew that this portal was for the rebirth of spirits. At this moment, someone stretched out his decrepit hands from the gate and declared that he could send one maiden to the dominant family of Hangzhou, where she will be in the role of the only daughter, and if Lu wants, she can buy this place. The main character could not understand how one could reincarnate a ghost for money. Mu, in turn, agreed, because living in a wealthy family is happiness. However, were his intentions serious, since Wang had already deceived her last time? The judge noticed that this time he was giving a 100% guarantee and asked for 5,000 magic stones. Lu began to bargain, which Wang didn't like, and set a condition for her: either she pays or he leaves. Mu immediately asked the girls to collect the necessary amount of money to send Lan to a happy and carefree life. The ghost girl said that the afterlife is corrupt and everyone only thinks about money. Where there are prices for living as a princess or in a prosperous family, all this costs several thousand stones. Ji-Hu realized why Lu was so diligent in collecting magical resources. At this time, the dissatisfied Reddy said that this spirit was too kind-hearted. Unexpectedly, Mu asked Hu to borrow 1,000 magic stones, and after Lan's reincarnation, she would marry him. Ji found a small bag of money and said that was all he could do to help her. The witch instantly pulled the stones out of his hands and gave everything to Wang, taking Lan with her. After which the judge called on the girl to enter the portal, since he connected it with 6 divisions and they had little time. Satisfied, Lu noticed that in 18 years they would meet, and said goodbye to the saddened girl. However, at that moment something incomprehensible began to happen. The Black Mountain was suddenly overcome by some kind of magic, and clouds began to gather over it. Then a loud roar sounded, a strong wind rose and the earth began to tremble. The main character was literally nailed to the wall of the temple. He could not move. A voice from heaven said that Mu had caused him too much trouble, and retribution awaited her. Ji-Hu guessed that it was actually the old Black Mountain demon. Although the monster did not show itself, it was clear that it was at a high level of cultivation, and perhaps even earth class. Chi said that the old demon is very strong and cultivates secret arts, which is why he cannot leave the Black Mountain. A moment later, hundreds of huge bats flew out of the black cloud. They headed straight into the portal of the underworld, which Lu could not allow. The witch ordered Lan to immediately run into the portal while she detained these monsters. Mu instantly summoned her ghosts, which flew out of that very tree. The demon's voice spoke again that his army of bats would kill them without his help. It is worth noting that the monsters really skillfully dealt with ghosts. Lu also got it, because she couldn't understand when the monster became so strong. At that moment, one of the mice appeared behind her. She was already about to attack the witch. However, Reddy intervened in a very timely manner and destroyed it, thereby saving Mu's life. After which the spider called upon all her demons to immediately rush into battle. Ji-Hu noticed that she hated Lu. Chi unexpectedly called herself Tsundra, who noticed that Jia really helped with her team, although she had to transform into a spider again. But Ji wasn't willing to just watch what was happening, and summoned his cleaver to do his part, killing dozens of bats. A voice from heaven said that the man should not have interfered in their affairs, and therefore death awaited him. After a couple of seconds, the number of monstrous mice increased many times. Chi urged the young man to be extremely careful. Ji-Hu looked at his pet, who stood idle and watched them fight. After which the guy brought sweat into the fight so that he wouldn't relax, so to speak. The rice cooker showed a master class and destroyed a flock of mice with the help of stolen items. This is what the demon started talking about. There were also the boar's things and Reddy's sword, which she had lost not long ago. The snake joined the others and said that there was even a poison dragon spear in the oven. Lan, in turn, asked Lu how Mu's gift ended up in this pan. At a certain point, the rice cooker ran out of all things. The magical pet instantly turned 180 degrees and headed towards its owner. The ghostly girls began to say that he could simply swallow these mice. Pot replied that there were too many of them and he would not be able to do this. Who shouted that he must have more items. Suddenly the pet remembered the junk he had lying around. Various cutlery and household items were used. However, they could do little to harm the demonic bats. But at a certain moment, a large house flew out of the rice cooker, which was quite strange. Everyone was shocked and stared at the main character. G said that he didn't know where he got his house from or how it even fit into the oven. Finally the battle was over, the old monster simply disappeared. It seemed that he did not even understand what had happened. After which Pot began to collect all the scattered things and say that he could fix it all. At that moment, Lu and Jir approached him and said that now they knew where their personal belongings had gone. Then the girls began to chase after the rice cooker. He said in his defense that he found it all on the floor. The boar, in turn, wondered what they would do next. Meanwhile, Mu hurried Lan to go to the afterlife, where a happy reincarnation awaits her. The girl burst into tears and hugged her mistress. She decided to advise her, get married as soon as possible, because she is not getting any younger, and later it will be much more difficult to do. The indignant Lu replied that she was only 1,200 years old and she was still young and beautiful, and the marriage should be by the will of fate. Lan added that she needed a rich and young guy with his own house, and who was the ideal candidate. The main character, as well as the spider, were at a loss when they heard about the marriage. Reddy said that she would never get G. Mu had a slightly different opinion. After which the sad ghost girls slowly walked into the portal. The witch said that she should not worry so much and they would meet soon. Lu hoped that Lan would not forget her by then and they could see each other, which she told her. The girl instantly turned around and asked if she could really forget everything. But Mu didn't know for sure. The girl wiped away her tears and collected her thoughts, then entered the gate. The witch, in turn, tried to restrain her emotions and not burst into tears. However, a moment later, Lan ran out of the portal and threw herself into the arms of her older sister, saying that she did not want to leave her. Lu tried her best to calm her down, saying that they had paid a lot of money and she should hurry, otherwise the portal would close. The girl stood her ground and declared that she wanted to stay with her, even as a ghost. The main character scratched his head and asked if she had not yet become a spirit. The sisters began to persuade Mu to leave Lan and take a couple of things from the afterlife. Chi, in turn, demanded a contract from Lu, the witch initially did not understand what she was talking about. Jir clarified that since Hu is helping Lanrua Temple, which is a strategic location for business, an agreement must be drawn up. Mu thought about it, Reddy began to urge her on, and the witch still agreed. The surprised boar asked Jihu if they would stay here, after which Lu and the spider began to bargain again. The witch tried in every possible way to reduce the price. Mu stated that Chi doesn't even know how to cook, because when she was making soup, she almost burned down the entire kitchen. The guy understood that passions were heating up and he decided to intervene to calm the girls. After which he asked Lu to at least sometimes be more gentle and give him something to eat, since he was hungry. At that same second, several leaves fell from her silky hair to the ground, which eventually turned into a huge tree with fruits on its branches. Mu noticed that each peach costs 5 magic stones. The young man picked one and ate it. The witch said that usually only she eats these fruits, and for some reason other girls don't want to. Jihu said that Lanrua Temple is located at the foot of the Black Mountain, but it is the market that is thriving, not this place. Lu replied that the Black Mountain demon is very rich and has long wanted to use her with her sisters. The mountain itself is not fertile and there are no resources there, and one day this monster personally asked them for help. But 20 years ago he received support from dark forces and even found the seal of the mountain left by his ancestor. At that time, their goddess was busy with cultivation and the Black Mountain passed into his hands. Thanks to this seal, the demon found rare silver powder, which was used to make magical tools. They say that even a pinch of powder is enough to increase the likelihood of success in creating materials. Then he built a market on the mountain, where tools are simple and cheap, but that is why they are popular and the market is thriving. Ji asked if other monsters wanted to capture the Black Mountain. The witch replied that there were such, but no one knows what technique the old demon uses, especially since he is at the initial level of the earthly realm. The main character realized that their long-term existence was simply a miracle. Lu explained that this demon cannot leave the mountain, and constantly sends his subordinates or his clone to them. He has 4 main clones and 2 that are long dead. At that moment, several cultivators flew past them, and the girls immediately began to lure them with their discounts. However, people said that the king had reduced the prices of all goods and now they all had 5 magic stones. Mu was furious and ordered that weapons be given to her to teach this scoundrel a lesson. The sisters, in turn, hastened to calm Lu, who was armed with a knife. The witch said that he did it for a reason, because in this way her business was under threat. At that moment, a plump man suddenly appeared in front of them. Mu said that he was the manager of the Black Mountain Market, and his name was Jean, who knew him as the owner of the inn where she and Yang were. The rich people were indeed greedy and strange people, because having the position of manager, he still tried to deceive clients. At this time, potential buyers appeared on the horizon again. Lu said that all her goods had 5 magic stones. But the money-hungry Jean shouted that his goods were cheaper, namely 4 stones. Then the witch also decided to sell goods for 4 stones, plus, every 10th purchase gave a bonus in the size of 1 item. However, the tireless manager reduced the prices to 3 magic stones. Following him, Mu hurried to reduce the price, but Lan noticed that they would only lose from this. Jean stated that she would lose this war since his king ordered prices lower than those of Lanrua Temple. The angry boar said that they could steal their business and force the market to close. The overconfident manager egged him on, saying that he was extremely curious to see how they would do it. At this moment, concerned Lan and Lu asked the main character to come up with a way to deal with this impudent man. The arrogant Jean, in turn, continued to provoke them in every possible way. Suddenly Chi approached them, who brought Hu's backpack and asked him what was inside that made it so heavy. Reddy then emptied the contents of the bag onto the ground, where there were various utensils. Jihu thought for a long time about how they could emerge victorious from this situation, and after a few minutes, he still said that he knew how to make Lanrua Temple rich. Everyone was excited for Ji's next brilliant idea, and he said that they could open a diner. The Black Mountain Market representative responded that this was ridiculous because they had 6 restaurants and they couldn't outshine them with their eatery. Embittered, Reddy said that she would personally cook and show them how to do it. However, the boar urged her to calm down and not add problems, especially since her cooking was like a deadly weapon. After all, last year her dish of fried fillet and peppers killed 5 monsters, and even a snake that was immune to poisons. Chi replied that this was the only mistake and it would not happen again. Little sister Jir also didn't want to eat the spider's cooked food because the last time she broke 2 of her fangs. But Reddy stood her ground and declared that she could cook well, which others naturally had doubts about. At a certain moment, the girl turned around and saw Jihu behind the counter. She asked what he was going to do. The main character threw the meat into the air and followed it with his magic knives. As a result, they beautifully and thinly sliced the meat, which lay neatly on the plate. Jean said that anyone can cut meat like this and he didn't see anything special. Then the young man asked Lu for some vegetables, if she had them of course. The witch instantly rushed to her magic tree and said that she could grow any product, given the energy. Mu calmly picked the mushrooms from the tree and headed towards Hu. The demons were at a loss, not understanding how vegetables could grow on a tree. Jihu was also impressed and pointed out that she could open a grocery store, after which the guy continued his magic and cut all the vegetables. Meanwhile, cultivators filled the entire courtyard to observe what was happening. People asked if his dish was ready. Ji replied that he needed the last ingredient. Sweat immediately gave him a strange object. Jean was stunned, because he recognized it as the seal of the Black Mountain Market. The manager literally began to beg the young man not to do this, but Hu, with a lightning-quick movement of his hand, cut the seal in half. The market representative was furious and said that it would take a lot of time to create such a seal. Ji, in turn, did not pay attention to him and continued to cut the seal with a straw, then asked Pot for a frying pan. The magical pet instantly split into 2 parts and appeared in the form of a frying pan. After some time, the main character began to fry all the vegetables. Jean noted that this was crazy, because he was using a magical tool as an ingredient. Jihu added some onion and ginger, then covered the pan with a lid for 3 minutes and reduced the heat. And when everything was ready, Ji invited people to try this unusual dish. Cultivators began to argue among themselves whether it was possible to use magical objects in cooking. Hu said that the cuisine of the 9th generation of China was known as university cooking, where recipes were pulled out of thin air. Ji asked who wanted to try first. All the demons took a step back, so Jin was in front. But at the same time, he flatly refused to eat this dish. Then the boar decided to help him. The monster grabbed him and ordered him to immediately try this concoction. However, even then he began to turn his nose up and said that they would not force him to do this. Reddy, in turn, was tired of messing around with this fat man, and she said that she would personally feed him. But after seeing one of her sisters try a piece, she instantly rushed to her, and she demanded that she immediately spit it out, which the baby eventually did. As a result, a huge fireball flew into the rock. Everyone was shocked. Jin instantly picked up the plate and said that he would still try it. The young man suggested that he cook white jade or pumpkin stew, but he refused. When the manager tasted the dish, he spat it out and said it was the worst concoction he had ever eaten. Cultivators noted that taste is not important here, the main thing is how it feels. The flushed Jin turned to the people and, with a contorted face, said that his stomach hurt. They suggested that the little girl could awaken some kind of magic. At this point, Jihu stated that he would still prepare the white jade dish and pumpkin stew. Surprisingly, the spider volunteered to help this time, who did not mind. Ji noted that he could transfer part of the power of the magical tool to whoever eats it. The masters could not understand how the attribute of a magical tool could be conveyed through food. The guy said that the main thing is that their stomach can withstand it. Besides, after eating the same dish several times, the effect does not add up. Jihu continued to convince people that magical items improve their internal attributes. But Jin said that this was all a lie and this method of cooking did not exist, and accused him of bribing the little girl. Then the young man invited him to eat pumpkin stew, but he again began to refuse. Chi couldn't stand it and literally threw him to the ground and poured stew into his mouth. All the cultivators instantly asked him how he felt. At this moment, a silver glow could be seen on his hand, like a jade bracelet. People were surprised. Jin personally saw it on his brush and realized that it was indeed true and the stew worked. After which the lively people began to bombard the guy with their requests. The representative of the Black Mountain Market hurried to return and report this incident to the king. However, he failed to do this. Jier grabbed him with her web and threw him to the ground. Then the very benevolent monsters started beating him up. Meanwhile, a fierce battle began, pitting Lanrua Temple against the cultivators, who wanted to exterminate all the demons and ghosts. Suddenly Chixie and Chi made eye contact. The spider immediately rushed into battle, saying that he had no right to come here and cause problems. Ian hastened to explain that this is not what he is here for, but Reddy could not be stopped. She accused him of kidnapping Jihu, who later caught a cold. Watching what was happening, Ji urged her to help Lu, and he would take over Chixie. The main character asked Ian where he disappeared to after the fall. The master immediately landed and replied that the farmers had told him about a 1,000-year-old monster that was plaguing Lanrua Temple. At that moment, the cultivators attacked them. They accused Chixie of helping the demons and tried to kill him. However, with their joint efforts, Hu and Yang easily defeated the naive warriors. Ji realized that in fact they were ordered to do this by the Black Mountain Demon. A moment later, a group of cultivators tried to kill them again, but Pot arrived in time to help. The magical pet immediately collected all the trophies and dealt with the masters. The guy said that no one could break them and invited Ian to meet sometime and chat over a cup of tea. However, at this time, a huge statue was flying towards them from the sky, which Jihu shouted about. The young man still managed to dodge and jump to the side, unlike Chishi. The unknown old man watched what was happening from the side and was surprised by the child's quick reaction. As it turned out, it was a perfect immortal named Jin Guang. Meanwhile, the fierce battle continued, with everyone actively using their abilities. The main character came to the conclusion that at the moment it is best not to interfere. But an enraged Jin suddenly headed towards him, trying to kill the guy. However, Guan discovered that Chishi had survived and the immortal hurried to fix it. The perfect master urged Jihu not to get in the way while he took care of Yang, which, in turn, was not as simple as it might seem. Chishi subsequently dealt a severe blow to Guan. As a result, Jin fell to the ground with a crash, causing the cultivators to become enraged. In connection with this, they hastened to attack him, but suddenly Ian's eyes flared with fire, and a moment later he turned into a huge monkey. everyone was horrified. Lu, in turn, understood why his energy was so unstable. Meanwhile, the gorilla was throwing the cultivators around, simply killing them. The boar asked what they should do now, because watching this monster destroy the temple was a bad idea. Hu stated that they needed to find his tail first, so that by cutting it off, the monster would turn back into Yang. At that moment, a tree flew towards Lu. Ji immediately picked her up on his bike. Thus, he saved her from certain death, after which they drove away from the monkey to a safe distance. And they began to think about what they should do next, and how to turn Chixi into a human form.